tats, tats, tats. It's usually quite rewarding to go visit a cat that is sitting on the planet. This cat has very intuitive cat. Danny, did you feel the cat coming into sleep with us and slept right as we crap between us? It's so funny as you roll around and she's like flop flop, and she just stays there. Flop, flop.
I know. She's like, oh, we're moving. Okay, I got this.
And sometimes you think she's still there.
No, don't worry about me.
Hello. Someone named Kevin. What? Oh, thank you. Oh, my thing's coming. Well, the audio's working. So, I still have a little bit of setup to do. I see Kevin is here. Hello, Kevin. I told some people I would message them and whatnot one more time, so let me check my... Kevin doesn't seem like you want to say hello, but that's fine. So let's see. So maybe we might have some people show up, but really, I had some things because since I don't make videos during the week, I figure it takes a while for people to come. Oh, thanks for telling me that. I forgot. Yeah, people are on approve. Why so quiet? Right here. There you go. Sorry. Your mic is muted still, but you can unmute it now. I had to join you.
Hello.
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 How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Right. Yes, I was invited along by some guy who I barely know, but seems to have taken a great deal of interest in getting me to come along and talk.
Oh, are you Kevin Logan?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Piero. Yeah, I'm familiar just with you a little bit, but only recently through the Laughing Witch stuff.
Yes. Yes. I think I've gained possibly unfair notoriety, I dare say. But
Though actually, I had seen your videos before because here's what happens is that I'm not really. Well, let's not go off on that tangent, but when Thunderfoot makes a video the last few years, it's usually such bullshit that I search for other people that have made replies to him for a few days. And
yeah.
and so I've run into you and people, and then I don't know, 6 months ago, or I'm not great with the times exactly, but recently I've I subscribed to Jenny McDermott because I noticed, hey, I've seen her reply a couple times to this Thunderfoot, so I'll just subscribe to her. And that's how I heard about the Laughing Witch thing, because even though I saw Thunderfoot's video, he just does, from my point of view now, well, always, I never liked him. You know, I didn't click with me. I knew he was being, it didn't click with me that what was going on because of that video, that he'd actually, like, I don't know what the word would be, but, you know, he doxed her or brought attention to that she was already doxed, whatever you would call that. And so then that's when and so then and I'm still subscribed to Jenny, though I was a little disappointed. Now, I don't know why Quintica, he and I have had differences in the past at various times, but we're getting along now fine. I know he wants to provoke conversations on feminism and anti-feminism. I defend feminism in general, and of course he doesn't. On the other hand, you know, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, like, I was disappointed on the video of Jenny's attitude towards like, I think labor activism is all activism. It's kind of all peace activism to me. So I believe you don't go after people's employment because that's just playing the boss card. You know what I mean? That's another area of activism that's like, well, wait, don't violate that to do this. But
which video in particular of hers was the problem for you?
Well, early on, when she was explaining, I had never heard of Laughing Witch. I hadn't seen her videos, not even through this, you know, process. I don't think I'd seen any of her videos. And she was just mentioning she was fine with that. Too bad, you know, people could go after your videos if people I'm working with, you know, if I was saying hateful things like you are, Thunderfoot, then, you know, the people you work with should be informed, and et cetera, et cetera. And I just happen to disagree with that in principle. You know, I have a question actually, so we could get, he might just think because, you know, I have unconventional views that it'll you know, because I point out there's a lot of factions within activism. But one thing that was, what do you think happened with, okay, so I basically think that what Laughing Witch did was, you know, was wrong. I understand the explanation. Quintica had done something similar, actually. And I disagree with it. On the other hand, the reaction was so overblown, and I thought she was just throwing it all in and going to keep going, because if she had kept going with her videos after she came back, yeah, there would be more of the vitriol, but then you can say, see, this vitriol is what I'm talking about, and it becomes a self-perpetuating story, which, if you're going to be an activist against the online bullying thing, is a totally legit thing to do.
But it became bigger than just her at that point. You know, you've got to bear in mind, I think she was the vice president or whatever of the company, and there were like about 15 people that were going to lose their jobs potentially. So it became more than just, if it were just her job on the line or whatever, she might have carried on. But when you've got the pressure of those many people, and coming up to Christmas as well, which obviously is financially a difficult time anyway, um,
Yeah.
she basically found it impossible to continue
Well, the
because it
thing
wasn't.
is, it looked like they weren't going to get let off. If they're not going to let off anyway, you might as well fight, right? And you
Yeah,
might gain some business even if you're in the
well, they actually,
Northeast or something.
bizarrely enough, it did end up sort of backfiring on those that had wished to destroy the business because they were able to get a lot of press locally about this because obviously they're not in a massive town in Maryland, and so like not massive news stories don't happen in those areas. So to have this kind of international online intrigue with economic not espionage, sabotage and stuff like that, it got into all the local media and business did really well out of it actually, bizarrely enough.
Right, and so the real reason to not pursue it further is because it's not really that fun of a kind of hobby or activism, and why not go back to your life? You know what I mean? When it turns out it wasn't all or nothing, that it can resolve itself in ways that are, real ordinary things you go through in life, kind of a shitty thing, but it's not actually going to destroy your ability to exist or anything.
True,
Um,
but it comes with the possibility to do so, if it makes sense. I think it was a case of once bitten, twice shy. That basically
yeah,
they didn't want to risk Thunderfoot continuing to make videos like that because
yeah,
it was getting really bad at one point because business basically stopped. Because a business
yeah.
like that relies on its Yelp page and its Google page and all of that.
Of course, see, this is the thing for me, and these are real people, so I totally think people should worry about their own lives. But with activism, you never know when people have just had enough and are willing to put up with shit. Because I certainly was interested to see Thunderfoot Thunderfoot's behavior tried in this court of common opinion, because so many people are like, well, Laughing Witch started it, so it's all going to be clear. Like that's how conflict happens in public dialogue. Now, I don't think so, and in the end, it wouldn't matter really. People might think Laughing Witch, something of Laughing Witch this way or that way, wouldn't really matter. Thunderfoot does have that PhD. He's been using it, and it also comes with it the responsibility. The way you use it to get authority is the same part that means you're supposed to have a higher demeanor. And there's so much that he said in his videos that would not play well on CNN, on an actual national stage. It only works in the swamps of the internet as we know them today. And so I was eager to see that. But I don't want her to do that. I was just like, it looks to me like she has no reason not to push forward with that. She certainly can't give in. And,
Yeah,
that's where it was
it,
going.
it, it's a shame in a way because I mean, as much as I don't like him, he did have the moral high ground. I think with I don't want to see people taking shit offline because it doesn't help anyone. Getting into that kind of flame war doesn't help anyone. And also, I think it's wrong because it then ultimately silences people. And in the end, unfortunately, ended up silencing the Laughing Witch. Um,
Yeah.
and he had that moral authority, and I think a lot of people would have thought better of him had he basically just come out. Because he'd addressed it at the time it happened back in January or February, whenever it was. And then he came back like 10 months later or whatever and said, look at this letter, blah, blah, blah. If he'd left it there, I think a lot of people would have had a lot of sympathy for him. But the fact that he retaliated with, I mean, it was the equivalent of trying to, crack a nut with a fucking industrial hammer or something. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So over
Wait,
the
Well, he
top.
wait,
should
wait,
have
wait.
accepted the
How
apology,
did
basically.
he? What particular course of action did you take most issue with?
It was the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. This is the Yelp page. Wouldn't it be
Yeah.
terrible if it got taken down with fake reviews? Which is essentially economic sabotage is
Well,
engaged in there.
frankly, like when this whole thing went down originally, I was kind of paying attention, and I noticed exactly the same things that Phil did. Now, to qualify, I don't particularly care for Phil Mason. I don't like that he uses the same strategies that his opposition use. I don't like the bullshit tactics. He's got a history of false flagging and shit like that, and I don't approve of that crap at all. But that said, who the fuck does it serve to lie about the circumstances surrounding this? I mean, who comes out looking good when everybody's slinging shit? And that goes quite highly for you as well. I mean, I'm blocked by you on Twitter. And the reason for that is because I called you out on some shit that I saw play out that I knew was bullshit at the time. And you were like, I'm not dealing with a misogynist or something like that, and blocked me. So, I mean, that does not paint you or the people that you associate with in a particularly nice light.
Well, I don't.
You agree?
This is exactly what I want to get into too. I'm going to interrupt that because this is what for last week's agenda to talk about this stuff is this idea of association, and maybe this is what Quintica wants, because I don't see why people we associate with. I don't know Kevin. I didn't know Laughing Witch. I'm a feminist. Do I not get to be a feminist? I'm associated with them, Quintica often, for example, and he does it in a very, I think, fair-minded way, trying not to do it, let's say. But he still associates when I say I'm a feminist that I'm supporting whatever Kevin and people he knows does, and other groups. I know groups of feminists Kevin's never met. So we have to separate this associational idea that feminism or any activism is defined by the people doing it at a particular point, and the fact that maybe that generation is doing it wrong. Maybe they're doing something different. There's also an analytic material definition for the things we're concerned with. The fact that we call ourselves feminists means something besides that we're in a club and like hanging out.
Well, absolutely, and I don't disagree with that. In fact, that wasn't even the parallel I was drawing, rather the close social circle. I mean, Kevin, maybe this was a while back now, but weren't you also involved in the letter writing campaign?
No.
So you were simply acting as the advocate for Laughing Witch?
No, I was defending, more than defending her, I was defending essentially the innocents involved in it. Like, if you're just going after her channel, that would be one thing. But there are a lot of innocent people getting fucked over in that situation that needn't have been dragged into it at all.
Well, I
I'm not
that.
defending the letter writing campaign, and I'm not really defending Laughing Witch. That was never my point. And as to me blocking you on Twitter, I don't remember the conversation taking place. I'm prepared to unblock you if that's an issue.
Oh no, I don't really care one way or the other.
My blocking campaign, my blockings generally take place when I'm being dogpiled. If loads and loads of people are just contacting me with shit posts, I just block them en masse. I can't be bothered. I've got better shit to do with my fucking life.
Well, I can say that my contact with it was certainly not as a fanboy of Dr. Phil Mason.
No, that's a fact.
Fine, but I was absolutely acting as an individual in that, and the circumstances is really what made me raise an eye. I'm blocked by hundreds of people for talking to the wrong people or associating with the wrong people, using the wrong words or whatever the case may be. But like I said, what really made me raise an eyebrow was the fact that I was saying, well, what you're saying right here is demonstrably untrue, and that got me blocked.
What was that? What was?
Well, I could dig it up. I think I have screenshots and stuff. I tend to keep records of these things.
Yeah, the thing that's bugging me is this. Okay, so this is all going to reduce down to all the kinds of stuff that we have online, and I'm not saying you're being petty. I mean, but I think in general these are petty kind of issues when really what we're facing with is things like we'll call ourselves feminists. These other people call themselves MRAs. We're told that we shouldn't be feminists. We should be egalitarian. But when I go do something to try to create more equal rights in any category, there's many categories, I don't see these so-called egalitarians down there. I'm sorry. I've been to debates that were sponsored, political debates by feminists. I've been to, peace rallies where labor was, funding the costly part of the event. I've never seen these egalitarians, or my mom, who's super conservative now. I was talking about social justice. And my mom and stepdad are both like, oh, man, social justice. So it's like, well, which of those fucking words do you object to? Can it just be justice, she said. And I'm like, sure. I mean, and so if we're going to talk about well, who did what on Twitter? All we're doing is we're identifying things we don't like about individuals, and then we're pretending that's about the activism. It has nothing to do with the activism whatsoever.
Can I address that? So, essentially, my position on this has been and continues to be that I am anti-tribalist. So I am completely an individualist. I'm quite libertarian left in my political leanings, and that is not like a label, a mantle I've picked up because it looks like a fun camp to be in. It's actually tools of utility only to describe my current perspective on the world. So no, I'm not saying like all this, all that, you this, us that. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I just dropped yesterday a video on that topic saying criticizing feminists for telling friends of mine who are also feminists that they're the wrong type of feminists. I'm like, well, no true fucking Scotsman, anybody? Like, really? So you wanted to criticize this camp of egalitarianism as if it is a camp, as if this is taught in academia and this is like a particular movement. No, this is a label of utility. It's an ideology. We are not a unified front. This is simply a word to describe a set of views on the world. Now, I don't particularly care for the term egalitarian because there's a lot of baggage in there, a lot less than feminism, I would say, especially in terms of historicity. But if I could find a better word to describe the way that I perceive these issues, I would take it up just as quickly because to me the label means almost nothing.
Well,
and that's what I wanted to go with this, is that what you actually do as an individual completely outweighs what the fuck ever you think, what you say, what labels you ascribe to yourself. That shit does not matter. You can call yourself an MRA and do nothing to help men at all. Who fucking cares? Call yourself a purple dragon for all I fucking care. It does not apply to you at all. And the same thing goes for feminists. That was one of the things I brought up in my video, actually, was a lot of my feminist friends, I'm coming to them and saying, hey, what are some criticisms you have with this like religious feminist circle where it's like so dogmatic that you cannot deviate whatsoever? And they're saying, well, one of the things I keep running into is that I've never seen any like more misogynists anywhere outside of those circles. Like, it's extremely cannibalistic and this kind of thing. Now, those aren't my words. And I didn't even put it in the video, to be honest, because I felt it would be too divisive. But the fact is that, like, the label does absolutely nothing whatsoever towards some, like, social good or whatever. You know, it's the actions of the individual that make it positive or negative one way or the other.
And Kevin, do you want to say anything? I don't want to just...
Yeah, well, I agree. The labels mean nothing. It's actions in essence. Labels are meant to basically describe. That's all, or ascribe, whatever. But yeah, my problem with the term egalitarianism isn't that people who are actual egalitarians are wrong, because I would argue that I think a lot of feminists are egalitarians, and actually some
all
are.
of them. All of them. Wait, no. I mean, Kevin, are you a peace activist or labor activist, or is it just feminism? Yeah,
No,
every single feminist I've ever known is, I meet them. I don't do that much on feminist protests. There hasn't been that many. They're there with me, with the candidates I'm supporting, protesting the war. In other activisms, they are egalitarians.
Dude, outside of the internet, this is going to be difficult for people who know my stuff. But outside of the internet, feminism makes up a very, very small amount of my activism. I'm actually much more a labour activist.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a peace activist in like the hippie sense, but like I'm generally anti-war and stuff like that. So feminism makes up a very small part of it outside of the internet. Actually.
Well, that's the whole thing. I've been trying to explain to them my alliance and the fact that I'm not going to turn on feminism is because in my whole political activist career, they're there helping the wheels turn around, and not just in a street protest against Iraq war, but also in local politics. They used to, the League of Women Voters, they used to run the presidential debates. They still run all the half, at least, of the county debates and stuff. They're always there. They're the boots on the ground, so to speak, of politics. I'm not turning on them.
Yeah, dude, I'm absolutely with you up to there. But you picked up on the semantics of me using the word not all, or most, or whatever.
No, I wasn't picking on you. I was trying to support. I know I come in, people.
Yeah,
I was
No, that's
supporting
fine.
the whole point. Yeah, of course. I've never met a feminist that wasn't an egalitarian.
Well, you kind of explored the internet or the dark recesses of the internet that
You
I've
can
been
meet
to,
an
because some of them
individual that'll
aren't.
break any kind of generalization, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. Some
But
of them are not particularly pleasant individuals, and they call themselves feminist. And I'm not going as I don't know your name,
yeah,
sir. I apologise. The man in the shade who I've blocked on Twitter. As he said, no true Scotsman. I'm not going to say that this person isn't a
get you.
feminist. If they want to ascribe that phrase or
No, I
that
will. I will. I
label
do, though.
to
You
them,
have to be an
that's fine.
activist. You have to go do something. Just having a blog and having a supposed opinion, that we know that saying words on the
Well,
internet doesn't mean you live that way. Therefore, it's good to say words on the internet. More power to you. But I can say who's the real Scotsman or not, because I'm judging who the real activists, what real labor activists are like, based on the people that I've met that are labor activists when we're working on a labor issue or working on protesting the war. And I'm primarily a peace, global economics kind of activism, peace and labor, and these are factions that are always there. So I know they don't just care about women or whatever, because they're there actually, and those are the real activists, and that's who I'm judging
Yeah,
from.
but what I mean, if all you do is write a blog, that's not great. I wouldn't say that's fantastic activism being taken part in there, but that in of itself is still activism in a way, because you're engaging in, well, not necessarily even a dialogue. Just you might be just putting something out there and never replying to anyone. But if you're taking part in the kind of the bigger national or
Yeah.
international discussion or debate on a topic, that's activism.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's an interesting point. Is it? I don't know. I think of it as an important thing. Like what we're doing is we're taking part in the public debate. It takes part at people's cocktail parties and at their barbecues and the kitchen table. And that is definitely akin to an activism, right?
Yeah,
Blogs are a little bit more difficult because there is this internet celebrity, e-celebrity culture of people looking for formulas to attract attention to their blogs, leading to a kind of insincerity that I don't want to call that necessarily activism.
true, true. But that's always been the case. It's just more
Yes,
obvious on the internet.
totally.
It,
Oh yeah,
like
no.
Coca-Cola having a huge sign in not in Times Square that says "Drink Coca-Cola" is the
Yeah.
most blatant example of that. People have always wanted to attract whatever attention or money or power that they can in any way that they can, and that's never going to change. I wouldn't have thought. It's
Yeah,
just
no,
the
and in
internet makes it
politics
so
it's
much more in
probably
your
been
face.
worse. Probably been worse in the past in politics actually, because you'd have the people that would have to get so well known that they'd be mentioned in the newspapers. Rarely were they really like the true the true heroes of the left. Those were not the people that ever got famous for being liberal, with a few exceptions like, Woody Guthrie or whatever. But yeah, so another issue I've been talking about with feminism is that I wish, like, if MRAs want to criticize certain feminists or say
Wait,
they
wait,
are
wait, wait, wait,
feminists,
wait. Be careful. You're making the same exact distinction that you take issue with,
which is,
which is this collectivism in terms of addressing all people
I
of a
should say, if
particular label.
no, I don't say there's a problem with labels. I didn't make the same issue with
No, no,
labels.
no.
I think
I
there
don't.
are
I don't mean about
arbitrary
labels.
categories.
I mean about grouping people together and judging them collectively. For example, I know
But that's
MRAs
not what I'm
that
doing.
are men's rights activists that are working for marriage, equity,
Right.
equality, working for child rights as a parent, equality, that are working
Right.
for body integrity, that are actually activists.
Yeah,
Male
no, I'm not saying
suicide.
otherwise. I'm saying
And
if
then there's
people,
MRAs that are simply anti-feminists that call themselves MRAs.
right, and
So
there's people that say they're anti-feminist and not primarily MRAs as well. So anyway, I probably did misspeak, but I wasn't going to say anything negative about MRAs at all, or even the anti-feminists in this sentence, in this statement. What I have been saying is that, I've been throwing at people's face, feminism's totally useless, they'll say that, and it's like, well, do you think women should be able to drive in Saudi Arabia? And basically, there's an undeniable feminist issue, no other way to describe it, internationally. Right, and if I was anti-feminist for any reason, or an MRA, or thought there should be male domestic abuse shelters, and feminists were stopping it. You know, I would say, I would criticize, you know, why aren't we feminists picketing Saudi Arabia's embassy? You know, we should probably be picketing Saudi Arabia's embassy, and in the end, we'll probably get better situations here at home if we go clean up the really big messes that still do exist abroad, a situation where we really do have some advancement, and we're not just claiming to. But so I wonder what you think about that, that there's an argument to be made that obviously feminism is needed, look internationally, and then the corollary, which is, okay, then feminists, there might be, you might lighten up on the campus activism and go picket, you know, the Saudi Arabia or Indonesian even, you know.
Yeah, this is a point that does annoy me, actually, and where I think the anti-feminists have a point to an extent, but don't always express it particularly well. And that's the, like, very few feminists got annoyed at the, do you remember there was the what was it, the air conditioning is sexist thing from about 3 or 4 months ago, which was fucking absurdity in the extreme. Like, feminists, even if it's only a small minority of them that get worked up about that kind of shit, need to fucking quit it with that nonsense, because you make yourself, and whether we like it or not, people do group people together. You know, the public consciousness works on a basis of broad definitions and umbrella over different groups and all the rest of it. And so when people read headlines like "feminists are outraged by fucking air conditioning," you make everyone look like pricks. So stop it. But in saying that, I don't want to do the fallacy of relative privation or agree with that point, where they go into you shouldn't be bothering about campus rape because rape is legal in Saudi Arabia. Well, okay, yeah, we should be campaigning against both of those fucking things. Often
well, I think if the female faces of feminism started to always mention as a priority the international situation, what happens is you go over there, you let women drive, that becomes, you know, if people are exposed to that, they start to see how they have the latent sexisms that, we allow the women to drive, but they see other similar but lighter things. So at this point, it would probably help our situation in the West to go ahead and focus on the international situation. And then also, anytime you can double up in activism, that's the best thing you can do, I think. So really, we have a problem internationally with Saudi Arabia, and being allies with them is a huge problem, I think.
It's not just Saudi Arabia is obviously the most extreme example, but there are loads of places like that.
No, but the reason I'm picking on them is because of the political side of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And here's the thing.
I mean, totally openly about that. You look for more than one reason, right? And that's the target.
Yeah, and I want to point out that, like, while I'm basically an anti-feminist, I don't even disagree on any of these issues. And that's one of the things I want to point out is I don't require this label or this ideology to advocate for women. As a matter of fact, in dealing with feminists and arguing some of the smaller points in feminism, one of the things that I've had thrown in my face most often is that, well, look, you're just Islamophobic because you reject these tenets of radical Islam. You know, it's a choice, it's a culture you don't understand, you're just racist because, of course, all Muslims are brown, which makes me want to shoot myself in the head every time I fucking hear that. Like, I'm a racist? You don't realize there's 2 billion fucking Muslims? Like, really? Again, like, I don't really see how this is a feminist issue so much as a human issue.
Because when a gender or a certain working class of labor or a particular group...
I think we're losing you, Piro. Hey, guys, how you doing?
Are you Quintica?
Yeah, that's me. How you doing?
I hit my mute, but go ahead, Quintica.
Oh, hey, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just, is the volume all right?
No, I accidentally hit mute.
Oh, okay. Well, the point about the when a feminist brings up like stuff in Saudi Arabia, when you talk about stuff here, right? Like an anti-feminist might say, okay, well, we have this ridiculous thing with air conditioners and man spreading and all that other stuff, right? And then a feminist, and I'm not saying you, I'm just saying some feminists, or people who call themselves feminists, will bring up Saudi Arabia, right? Now, when the Lila Perry thing happened in Missouri, I saw that as a problem because he was told specifically not to use the girls' bathroom in the girls' locker room. And the complaints that came against him came from a 14-year-old girl was the first one, right? And she was saying that he had watched her and she had seen him in the bathroom. Now, I'm not saying that that is the main issue, that he's the main issue, but it's the idea that the media jumped on this and vilified the parents, and the feminists did nothing that I could see to complain against that. And when I brought that issue up, a lot of times I would get, well, in Saudi Arabia, this is what happens. Well, when I'm talking about something that happens here that's a women's issue, that's what I'm focused on. Not what's going on in Saudi Arabia. Now, I know in Saudi Arabia, there's terrible, terrible stuff going on.
I don't...
Sorry. And I think that it's going to be more than feminism. I think it's going to be something where it's a whole, cultural shift, right? And, I'm not saying that feminism won't work to help things there, but I would rather see, if there is an issue here that needs to be taken care of, that's addressed,
okay,
as well as the...
I don't see why feminists are supposed to be involved in that one issue that you're talking about. Two, I think it's perfectly fine to talk about issues here as well, and I offer the Saudi Arabia example as more, hey, if you're going to criticize feminists of this current time, or these blogger feminists, or the Twitter feminists, or whomever, then, here's a legitimate thing that shows the only problem there could be with an activist is if they're not actually working for their activism, or, their activism is something evil like, Nazis. But I mean, we're not talking about that, because we're all here going, yeah, women should be able to drive and have rights. I want to say something that's probably, I just decided to let it sound a little bit elitist in a way. But I think this thing about the air conditioning is like, we have society doing a lot more reading and exposed to this conversation that was never true in history. And, an essay like that is kind of like a modest proposal or something. And it doesn't even really matter if the author totally understands it. But these essayists that write all the time, sometimes you got to find a clever gimmick. You're trying to write about something. Sometimes you have some clever gimmick that clicks, and everybody gets upset about it, and that's a success. That's basically, they're essay writers. That's what you're trying to do. And the big hullabaloo, it's like, to me, I'm waiting to get worried about it until they're going to make air conditioners illegal. If a couple campuses stop having air conditioning or adjust it or whatever to adjust for the feminism, I would find that so fucking funny. Totally not against that. You know what I mean? So it's really just, an essay writer is doing their writing thing, and they got your attention. Boom, they won. That's it.
That's really cheap and shit. If you can't grasp people with good writing, don't be a fucking writer.
But that doesn't even make sense, Kevin, because look, assume there's infinite number of writers, because after even out of 3, 5, a billion people, however many people are doing the writing, might as well be infinite. So there's going to be every kind of writing, and you can only blame the audience.
Well, that's true to an extent, but I have to get Kevin's back on this one. The idea that feminists in the first world have so little problems in actuality that they need to bitch about air conditioning, or that they have an audience for bitching about air conditioning, is damning as fuck. If you are working for issues in the West that you perceive, let's hear about them. Let's air these grievances. And I think most people, there are very few people in this world who are honest-to-God misogynists. Most people give a shit about women more than men. That's been my observation. And I would be fucking...
Why can't air conditioning be sexist? I don't understand that. Why is that impossible? Why can't it be that
it's not that it can't be sexist.
It's set too cold for how women dress. I don't see why that's not a real thing. It's just not a high priority.
Well, that's exactly what I'm fucking saying. Like, if your life is so fucking good that you're complaining about air conditioning, that does not paint you in a good light as this oppressed class, which is exactly the narrative that feminism is selling. It's in the fucking...
I don't sell
It's
that
in the
narrative.
etymology of the word, dude. It's
No.
feminism. Feminism.
Yes.
Femin, Latin for woman.
Because there's systematic bias against women in the world.
That's the claim, but when you're talking
No, it's
about
a
air
fact.
conditioning, it throws it under the fucking bus.
Right. No, only if you want to say, look, air conditioning, obviously, under the bus. What about
Well, that's
driving
my
in Saudi
point, isn't it?
Arabia? I'm trying to say driving in Saudi Arabia because it's easy to remember, so that we can remember it. Every other sentence you do, when you
Okay.
say feminism has no use
It looks
at
like
all.
Kevin wants to say something.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
I know that seems quite bad because you stepped in to sort of get my back, as you said. But one thing I will pull you up on is that I don't think it necessarily just speaks badly to feminism that there's an audience for that particular topic, because I think a lot of the hullabaloo, a lot of the nonsense that sprang up and made that go viral was anti-feminists looking for nitpicky shit to get hold of, which is partly the problem of the writer for writing shit like that, and partly the response of anti-feminists.
Well, look,
looking for
I don't
any
blame
old
the writer.
nonsense.
But wasn't it? It was at some site. You could blame that site. I forget. It was some
No, you
site
have
that
to-
gave it credibility, right? I don't know where
No,
it
you
was.
have
but it
you
was
have to
some
blame the
journal.
writer. I'm sorry, if like I say,
Well-
if you can't write something worthwhile at all, if you have to write something so, and look, yes, it can
Yeah.
be sexist, it can be used in a sexist way, but really, is that if that's the biggest problem you've got, and you wish, in a way, you are aiding the opposition, as it were, if you want to imagine it as two sides. I know it's not as simple as that,
Yeah.
but
Right.
for the sake of the thing, you're aiding your opponents by making yourself and your side look like idiots.
See, I just look at it different because you are an opponent, is from my point of view. And I judge most celebrity, especially the e-celebrity or intellectual celebrity of not
I'm-
super well-known, I judge that entirely on the audience. Entirely. I mean,
Did I miss your point? Did you say I'm your enemy?
no, I said that person that... No.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm saying that person that is supposedly a feminist that's making feminism look bad, they're my opponent. So I don't look at them as aiding my opponents. They're just a part of my opponents. So
Right.
I really judge more the feminists that shouldn't be opponents of mine that go, yeah, or whatever. On the other hand, was such a ludicrous thing. Anybody that would actually get upset and prioritize that other than for an afternoon read, I'm glad if they would get gathered out there, just separated out, because you can show up at a peace protest and it's chaos because the people there don't really care, so there's a danger of getting popular support for things where the people that end up coming, they're no help,
Well, and you brought up, in talking about adversaries, I think an interesting false dichotomy. And like I said earlier, like in terms of areas where there's a particular gender that's affected, as somebody who gives a shit about humans and believes that we're intrinsically equal, that we developed together biologically, we're inseparable. We are the human race, full stop. Now, that being in mind, if somebody gets in my way of actually helping other people and they're being counterproductive, they are my adversary in that instance. I don't give a shit what label they have. So this idea that anti-feminists and feminists are like adversarial, yes, in terms of ideology, almost certainly. I mean, my biggest issue with feminism is the presuppositionalism that women are always and inherently repressed, rather. And I don't see that as being true everywhere in the world. It certainly is in places, and I take major issue with that. Now, if we together, as a feminist and an anti-feminist, are working on some issue that primarily affects women, how am I your adversary in that case? As an anti-feminist.
Well, as an anti-feminist?
Yes.
Well, I don't think from what you described that you are an anti-feminist. If you
Well,
criticize some clique of people that are sanctimonious, that doesn't make you an anti-feminist just because they call themselves feminists. Do you support the fact that women should be able to drive in Saudi Arabia? It's another country. Well, there you go. Then you're a feminist as far as I know.
Well, that's
Yeah,
the
you
problem,
don't-
though. I know too much about
when you
feminism
admit there's
to
a system,
claim the label.
no, but you just called feminism. You know too much about feminism, meaning the personalities averaged out over the group of people
No.
you think of as feminists.
No,
What
not
is
at all.
there ideologically in looking for systematic bias against women that could possibly be objectionable?
First of all, there are multiple fields of feminism, and this is academic study we're talking about.
Yes.
I'm not talking about individuals on Twitter or some shit. So you've got
And you have
six
to prove
major.
that all of them.
No, look, let me finish. So all of these, I mean, there's ecofeminism, there's radical ecofeminism, there's radical feminism, there's intersectional feminism, which is now looking more like radical feminism. There's classical liberal feminism. I mean, which feminism is the true feminism? The one I would identify with most
Why does
closely.
there have to be a true one? I don't get that.
Well, that's exactly my fucking point. When you say
Why should there
feminist,
have
what?
to be?
Hold on. When you say feminist, what do you mean by feminist?
I
So
mean
that's
someone
exactly
that
what I'm
wants-
getting at.
I mean somebody that wants to address systematic bias against women.
And now, like, we're getting, that's like saying I'm a Christian because I believe in Jesus. Well,
no, the
sort of.
the difference is you're talking
But
about.
I'm a Presbyterian. You know what I'm saying?
The differences of what that you're talking about are simply a matter of an argument over what actually constitutes systematic bias.
Bullshit. So, I mean, the focuses of ecofeminism could not be further from classical liberal feminism, for example, just to draw a parallel. Now, I would almost be a classical liberal feminist by definition if I was going to go down the line and say, I agree with this part of the ideology, I agree with that part.
Mm-hmm.
And then where I get hung up is like, it's not about equality, it's about liberation of women from patriarchy. And I'm like, we've got a woman running for president of the United States right now. Merkel is president of Germany. I mean, where in the West, where the fuck is the patriarchy? That's what I'm saying. And now we get into
I think
patriarchy theory and
largely
presuppositionalism. That's where I deviate from feminism right there. That's why the label doesn't fit me. I don't believe in that.
Because I think, yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's a really dumb point. You
How
can
so?
you can make sensible arguments for the patriarchy being a thing of the past or whatever, but ultimately you'll point to, oh, well, there's a woman running for president right now. Yeah, when has there ever been a serious candidate for a female president in the history of America?
Well,
Today.
what does that have to do with the fact that there is no systematic presence that would keep her from doing that? That's my point.
Well, I don't think that's.
Well, no,
you cannot prove there is no
I would-
systematic
yeah, I would
bias.
argue
There
that
is.
there
you can't prove a negative.
Look at the way that she
No,
is
you can
treated
show.
compared to. Look at the way that she is treated by comparison to other people in that race. When it comes to the fact that her husband cheated on her, right, and yet she
Wait,
somehow
where's-
is blamed for that, whereas Donald Trump, who has cheated on 3 separate wives, that's just skirted by. That's
Okay,
totally
we're
fucking
lost
ignored.
in the fucking weeds now. So
Now, the
you're
point being that
I know. I
it's
thought
not,
you were talking about
it's
Carl.
not a formal legal system. It used to be, but it's no longer that, thankfully, partly because of feminism in the past. It's not a formal legal system of patriarchy, but there is a system that holds women down to the advantage of men.
okay. So
Even-
that is
even
exactly
at that top level.
that
So
is
this is what I
exactly where I deviate from feminism because I
No.
reject this
No,
claim
you're within
based on lack of
No, but
evidence.
I would argue you're within feminism, and you're two feminists arguing what counts as. Where is the threshold of systematic bias that you're concerned with? That you are arguing about whether this really is a systematic bias, but you both agree that when you find a systematic bias, it should be eliminated. That makes you feminist because there
Hold
are
on.
historically people that don't believe that. Women should be kept down. They're not smart enough to drive. They should not be able to own property.
First
and
of
you don't
all,
believe that, therefore you're a feminist.
I would caution you not to bring up history in light of feminism. Secondly,
Well, I'm going to.
Actually,
so-
I'd like
okay,
you to-
we'll go
I'd
there
like you
then.
to expand on that point.
the second thing is that if feminism was the very basic Merriam-Webster definition, that is the advocacy of women on the basis of equality to men and social, economical, political. Okay, I agree with that. That is not at all a point of
Right.
debate for me.
Okay, so you're
But
feminist.
in terms of actual feminisms, when you look at each ideology, they all hinge on patriarchy. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Well,
at that point, you've lost
to
me.
you then. Maybe I can break it down a little simpler. Patriarchy is a term for traditionalism that you find in feminism. Hippies call the man. People in ordinary conversation say they, the things they won't let you do, and they want it this way, and they always this and that. It is about traditionalism and specifically the traditional command and control architecture in terms of all of those terms. In the patriarchy, they look at the role of gender roles within this hierarchical system. So, for example, a common misconception is the patriarchy has never said that every man outranks every woman. The princess totally in a higher position than the the Cooper. And that's not confusing, but within a particular social strata, you have the man as the king of his layer, so to speak, of his echelon. And patriarchy focuses, is just the word for traditionalism with an emphasis on gender roles. So really, talking about patriarchy, it's like it's the same thing that sends men off to war and says they'll be heroes. Well, the hero part would be a positive thing, to having to mostly die in war, negative thing. It's the whole traditional system. It's often misunderstood as some idea that men get a free subsidy from the government, and it's never meant that.
And I don't misunderstand it at all. I've read many different theories on the patriarchy, and I reject all of them I've read so far. Now, you wanted to talk about history. You're talking about sending men off to war. Are you familiar with the White Feather campaign?
No, what about my...
Hold on. Are you familiar with the White Feather campaign?
Stick with my...
yeah.
No, I want to stick with the definition of patriarchy. I said it's really just a word for traditionalism. Feminists are opposed to traditionalism.
And I reject that as well. It completely misunderstands sociology, history, biology. I mean, you're throwing out a whole lot of baby with that bathwater.
In the sense that feminists do support traditionalism.
I don't support traditionalism, nor do I reject it.
Feminists support traditionalism.
Typically not, no.
And that's what they mean by the patriarchy.
And that's where we diverge, exactly. Because really, it's a gross oversimplification.
Is used in so many different ways. If you look at the common clue,
I know.
It's a word for traditionalism.
I know, and I reject that as well. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's
you
where you
traditionalism or my definition of it.
I reject aspects of traditionalism, but I reject the patriarchy theory as it applies to traditionalism as well. I think it's an oversimplification, and that's a deep topic. But what I wanted to talk about is, you're talking about the history of feminism being this great and noble thing. I mean, are you aware that the first wave feminists in this country, in the United States, were anti-abolitionists?
Yeah.
Now, there were elements of that.
I was just talking about the League of Women Voters. The woman that started that, she was a great feminist. She was also a racist.
Yeah, well, and it's more than just simple.
No one's perfect.
That's exactly it. It's more even than simple racism. There was a whole lot of factors there.
They're also racist. The anti-feminist open racists were also racist. So abolitionists that didn't believe in women's rights.
Many were. Yeah, well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is
right,
that
so
it's always more complicated.
I believe in all of those things, including feminism. I believe in all of them. There's feminists that can't. I'm a men's rights activist. Now that I thought this is great. I can oppose war as a peace activist and point out men die in war and suicide in the workplace. I can do labor rights activist and point out that, hey, by the way, this is a men's issue. More men die in these fucking coal mines than women. I love that. I'm going to grab all of them. It's not a reason to discriminate and say feminism is shit because it's not the whole picture. It's how people get into feminism.
Look,
I mean, into social justice. They're Cindy Sheehan. Her son dies in war. She became more liberal in general after realizing how wrong war is. That opened her up to all of these other things, like feminism, like labor rights activism. That's how we get people into activism.
Well, what I'm saying is that as a label, it fits me very ill. It does not describe adequately my position on
Fair enough.
a lot of issues. That's
Fair
why I've kind of settled on egalitarian, because it also covers things like anti-war
Yeah.
activists and stuff. It's concise.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you could
And I
break
think
it out.
that-
You could
I think
unpack
that-
it. You could call me like a modified classical liberal
Well, yeah.
feminist.
No,
but
and
that would be
that's-
that would be confusing, wouldn't it?
Right. Okay.
Especially
so
since
thank you,
most
yeah.
people aren't even aware of all the feminisms
No,
that
it's
exist.
open of you. I'm technically saying that, but I agree. I think you have a right to reject certain labels for whatever the connotations, or you don't like the sound of it. Right? I do that all the time. So sure enough. That's
Yeah,
fair.
I mean, yeah, and I'm not really a men's rights activist either, even though I've advocated for men's rights in the past. I mean, yeah, I guess the label kind of fits, but that's not really my focus.
Yeah,
I
that-
believe in reaching out to the people immediately around us, because those are the people within arm's reach. And then as we can affect larger and larger circles around us, so be it. Like, I'm absolutely willing, if you guys want to go fucking protest Saudi Arabia's treatment of women and try and like get a trade embargo going or something serious like that, like I will fucking support you in that. I think it's absolute horseshit what's going on over there. But that's exactly what I'm saying, is that if we get caught up in the tribalism and the labels and the stupid shit and patriarchy theory, and we get lost in the weeds, like, what are we actually doing for anybody at that point?
Yeah.
Now, these discourses do need to happen. I'm not disparaging that. But what I'm saying is that we tend to focus so highly on the little tiny nitpicky bullshit and completely ignore the big shit going on. And that's people's criticisms of things like air conditioning, offenses and
Can I just
stair
say-
rape and fart rape and stupid shit like that, like
The thing
Kevin
is,
was saying
look,
earlier.
look, it's a billion person. We've got all these people in the world. Look, you're just going to have to not take that stuff seriously.
Well,
because
I don't
those
take it
people-
seriously. I don't
Well,
think many
no,
do.
people do. They make a big kerfuffle about it. I couldn't even be bothered to read that.
Yeah.
Because it's just it's not supposed to not happen. It's like it's an entertainment kind of thing, and you if you happen upon it and read it, you go chuckle, like reading a mediocre fiction in some magazine or something.
Right.
I think that if we let ourselves get riled up about those things, now agreed, my approach means that sometimes I'm so slow to get riled up, something might become an actual problem before I get riled up, and I agree, it's good to have more than one person thinking about this, and when is it a crisis or whatnot. Speaking of crises, I actually have decided that I think Donald Trump actually is the best Republican. That's how bad those guys are. And of course, I'm a Bernie supporter, and
I'm interested to hear your reasoning for that, because just on the basis that he has absolutely no experience as a politician, surely puts him
Yeah.
below at least a couple of them, maybe even Jeb Bush. As shitty as Jeb Bush is, at least
Well,
he
okay.
has some experience as a politician.
right, I was thinking Jeb Bush or even Kasich, but then I was remembering, wait, when Kasich came back on the scene, he was the darkest, he was the Darth Vader out there, and they've just gotten so much worse. And I realized, well, I can't let him compromise, make me compromise too much. Jeb,
Yeah,
same thing,
I'm
yeah,
not-
competency. But here's what it was: is one, okay, Trump is looking against Cruz. Well, versus Cruz, I mean, he would shut down the government as a stunt that didn't even pay off. He's very dangerous.
And
then I
he's
was
a massive
thinking about
religious
Bush and
figure
him.
as well.
Bush has, yeah, and Bush and the Kasiches, they have been systematically selling us out, building the factories, the meat factories through which we've been grinded for so long, that the fact that they have a competent face and they are competent when they go to their work shouldn't change you from realizing what that work is, and actually that systematic abuse that I think the whole Republican candidates are all for now, that Donald Trump as a wild card is better. Now, don't get me wrong, I might leave the country if he wins, but if it's Donald, there's an advantage to Donald versus Bernie, because people might think Bernie's a little bit comic book character like they think Trump is, and it becomes a fair fight that actually Bernie could win. And what if the Republicans take out Hillary, like they managed to get an indictment in October, surprisey kind of, but for the primaries style, and they could take Hillary out, and because Bernie's close enough, and they could actually help make it possible that we would get Bernie, because other than that, it doesn't seem too likely.
A couple of things you said there. One about the how Kasich looked like the Darth Vader, I think you called him, but everyone else has got worse. It made me think. Imagine if George Bush, as hideous as he was, as much of a warmonger, just piece of shit, he would be a pussycat in this field. He would be an absolute fucking. He would be the conservative or whatever of this field.
Well,
They would fucking
yeah.
scream at that.
Well, for sure, especially since he ran as the compassionate conservative, just a little more Texan than my daddy. You know, I mean,
Yeah, do
we
you
all
remember-
thought he was going to be
remember-
like Daddy, compassionate conservative, pretty liberal guy, you know, actually, for a
Yeah,
Republican.
do you remember those days when the GOP you could actually get elected by the GOP by using words like compassionate?
Mm.
Crazy
Yeah,
days.
they
But
really-
yet that's how far right the Republicans have gone now.
Well, but
That
that's what sets
it's
the field
genuinely,
for.
genuinely not impossible that a man, he's not actually a socialist in any real sense, but
No.
a man that calls himself a socialist could be president of America.
Yeah, it sets
I
that
don't
up.
see that. I don't think it will happen, but it's not unfeasible anymore.
No,
Yeah,
and it has
and
happened
that's-
in history. I mean, in history, it can happen. This is what sets up these kinds of things, or sometimes a revolution or whatever it's going to be. So we'll see this time. Looks like it won't be.
There won't be a revolution. The American people aren't engaged enough for a revolution.
No. Pillet et circenses, if I remember the Latin. But one of the problems I have with feminism, to get back on that, it ties into this. And I mean feminism as academic term, okay? In that you've got all these ideas that kind of push us into self-segregation. Well, at the same time, I'm arguing with more people like you that are liberal, like myself, that agree with some of the same tenets. I mean, I don't want full open socialism, but I want big pieces of it. Yes, absolutely. I want as much individual liberty as we can have with making the system work for us as much as fucking possible, because that's what it's there for. Otherwise, why bother? Why not just be anarchists, you know? So, yes, I absolutely believe that we should be working towards these things. I think Hillary is a terrible fucking candidate, not because she's a woman, but because she stands for everything the old guard stood for. She is an absolute empty shill, in my opinion, and from everything I've observed of her voting record, her political record, who she takes money from, I mean, I could give a shit what genital she has. She's kind of a piece of shit. And you got
That's what annoys me. The
Yeah.
first woman to come along in the history of your nation that has a genuine chance of actually becoming president.
And she's shit.
I desperately don't want her to become president.
There you go,
I
Michael.
agree. I don't care what genitals she has. I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, women voted in Bill Clinton because he was more attractive in this country, and that to me is not a gendered issue so much as an educational issue. Like, what the fuck? Like, do you not understand how the system works? So, you know, like I said, we get caught up in all this sandbox bullshit. Like, oh well, vagina this, penis that. It's like this. We're talking about the whole fucking country.
But what do you mean? What were you saying about Clinton? As far as I know, Clinton, it proved that he was an
Bill?
excellent manager, yeah, for this country.
Well,
He
no,
did
I
everything
wasn't.
right.
I have some problems with Bill Clinton, but I have problems
what?
with every president. Well, for example, like we had some really two-faced bullshit going on with Saddam. A lot of that was just absolutely like abominable. We were bombing the entire time and pretending like, oh, like everything's cool. The planes are
Also,
going
look-
off the aircraft carriers, come back with no bombs. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
What
look
was that?
into the bombing in Serbia as well. Some very,
Right.
very nefarious antics.
Exactly.
Oh, well,
I
that's
mean,
more
there's a
gendered
lot of
stuff.
shit there. But my point wasn't that Bill was a
So
good
you
or
hate
bad
every
president.
American president. That's fair enough.
Well, to some extent. I mean, everybody's fallible. But
Well, there's never been one that didn't do that since I don't know how far you have to go back.
well,
before
we're a
Teddy
war
Roosevelt or
state for
something.
sure. But that's not my point.
The
My
last-
point was
the last
simply
president before the invention of the plane. But
I can agree with somebody being elected and not agree with why they were elected. So with Clinton, like, to me, sex appeal is not a fucking reason to vote somebody
I
in
don't
office.
see why you say that. He was a chubby guy. The only sex appeal was that. he
No,
was
that was
suave
actually
with
polled
his
for.
saxophone.
I'm not making that up. That was
But I'm
actually in
saying
the
it
polls.
was personality. Like, I've seen him speak, and even though I didn't like him. I was a Jerry Brown supporter. He looked like a blow dried. I hated him. I was all hippie young. I was like, fuck him. And yet I've seen him speak live, and actually over time I started to get that he had some ideas that I needed to catch up with, actually. But I've seen him speak live, and like Reagan, that some of these guys really have the golden, you know, people fall in love with him. I think in the case of women, yeah. So he was considered attractive, and so a chubby kid that has that kind of style and learns saxophone can be sexy. See, that's the
Apparently.
patriarchy
It was
for you,
news to
because
me.
that doesn't work for women. So there's
Well,
the patriarchy right there.
That's silly though. Saying like I said, I was approaching this from the angle that that's not an educated reason to vote.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, of course.
But like, I think biology trumps most things in our human experience, and the reasons we do things are informed by it.
Yeah.
So to say like patriarchy, while we're the sexually dimorphic species and we have, you know, sexual differences, is kind of silly. But you know, what I'm saying is, like, if we focus more on education, you know, keeping in mind that a male candidate who has all the best interests of everybody in mind, including women, is a better candidate than a female candidate who would throw everybody under the bus, you know, doesn't really have anything to do with gender at that point.
Yeah.
It's who will advocate for me, who will
Well,
not.
I'll admit, a few of my social justice friends have, you know, it's like, well, Bernie and yet another old white man. Why does he have to be an old white man? But they say it with humor from the point of view, and now I'm going to have to vote for an old white man because he's the best.
I just wanted to jump in, if I may, for a moment and insert something into the dialogue. I'm hoping that that there becomes an internet for the next election, if you will, an internet. Because it probably won't be covered by the major networks. An internet independent candidate argumentative platform, and then I'm just going to say that if radical Islam, like Bernie's very internalized in terms of domestic policy as it relates to income inequality. That seems to be his theme that he keeps moving his center back to. And even though Bernie's got my vote, at least currently, that the idea that the radical Islam caliphate, if Hillary becomes president, if it comes down to, let's say, Hillary and whomever the Republicans post up, because apparently Donald Trump might be sideswiped by delegates and maybe it's going to become one of these other guys, right? But what I was going to say was that Hillary, being a woman relative to radical Islam, if they say that whomever kills radical Islam is an arm, like police are the arm of the law, right? Like if Hillary's the head killing radical Islam, then it might be a threat the same way that women actually, as troops killing Islam, threatens their entrance into heaven. But that's just a side note. How y'all doing?
Wait! You're saying if a woman president was ordering all of the drone bombings and stuff, that would somehow be a strategic advantage because of the fact that would make ISIS feel impotent to be beaten by a woman?
Right, because of their religious notion that if a woman kills them, they don't enter heaven. If that is in fact a Muslim tenet, which I'm not certain of, but it's
I don't know about that. But that whole strain, remember, this isn't Islam. This is also just psychotic paranoia of an emotionally distraught person. So that's interesting. That's a reason to have a female. I would buy that enough to have a female Secretary of Defense.
What's that, Kevin?
I don't think it makes any fucking difference.
Probably not.
These people are crazy. You could elect a fucking house brick and
in Mike's defense, it definitely has there's a cogency to it of like for the poets and the analytics here. I think it's an interesting idea that if you're playing with the psychology of the situation is important, obviously, right? This is not a regular war. This is a psychological situation.
True, but I'd rather just have someone who could sort it out. I don't care how extremist, whether they be extremist Muslims or anyone else, feel about it.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, what do you think about that? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, the president is certainly a figurehead and counts much more towards appearances than actuality in America especially, but elsewhere in the world. Anytime you have any kind of parliamentary system, they're only a small part of the big machine. Yeah. Now, in terms of like radicalism overseas, I wish we would stop giving them fucking armaments.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be a nice start. I don't care who does it. Just fucking like stop with the charades. Let's
Well,
admit what we're doing over there.
Bringing it back to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is the fulcrum of all of the problems here, really,
I
because
think so.
we sell just Britain alone. We've sold something like $13 billion of arms to them in the last decade, and those arms get funneled to Wahhabist extremists throughout the fucking world
On purpose. That's their governmental philosophy
Yeah.
from day
We're
one.
not going to deal
But
with
we sell them the weapons that they go and kill innocent people with.
Yeah.
That's
Well, so
wrong.
what does everybody think of Bernie's approach? And I believe, oddly enough, it's Trump's of you need to make there needs to be a local coalition. Now, my ideal liberal fantasy, it's got like Iran and Israel. But whatever, it's got to have Qatar, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, maybe Egypt, local powers get in, especially Qatar and people with money. They got 1 million soldiers over there. They need to take care of it. And before we do the things that I agree with, which is stop selling so much weapons, we do support them with weapons and with maybe air support, but locals go in. And I think that's the solution right now to the fact that obviously ISIS does have to be militarily defeated and kicked out. They can't be let to collect taxes. That's not okay.
To pour some comical scorn upon your hippie ideal of Israel and Iran fighting on the same side, Israel qualifies for the Soccer World Cup as part of the European qualification system precisely because they couldn't possibly police a game of soccer between Iran and Israel.
I know, yeah.
So if they
But
can't
from
even
the American point of view, you both play soccer. You might as well all be French.
Well, yeah, and I mean, this whole discussion about this situation with ISIS, which our spokespeople for our government prefer to call ISIL because it limits them geographically, but that's not accurate at all. This group is made up of a very complicated system of powers and motivations, and the reason for it is fucking disgusting. I mean, one of the problems I have with a lot of my co-liberal people here that I disagree with so strongly, self-identified SJWs, if you will, is the fact that this idea of all immigrants are good, all Muslim immigrants are innocent. Well, look, we had this situation in Syria, the Syrian civil war that sprung up and caused this whole fucking thing. That is absolutely horrible situation. And now that the statistics are coming out for specifically Syrian refugees that are being settled in Western countries, they're doing quite well. Very, very little crime per capita. Almost no assault or anything like that. These are apparently not very radical people. On the other hand, when you're letting in people from Northern African Muslim nations that are migrating for no other reason than to migrate, maybe there's something else going on there. And ISIS has specifically stated a strategy of infiltration. And then everybody's fucking surprised. Look at all the rapes in Cologne. Oh my God. And it turns out the fucking Syrians are getting blamed for shit they're not fucking doing.
Yeah,
all brown people are not the same. All Muslims are not the same, Fuck.
Yeah, exactly. The Syrians being blamed for this always seems strange to me because self-evidently before all this kicked off, Syria was a relatively peaceful, prosperous,
fairly moderate.
It was like Jordan is portrayed now. That's how Syria's been.
Iran in the 60s.
Kings. And Christians were allowed to live there. Yeah, no, it's funny how it all fell to shit.
Well, and I want to say that we're not going to deal with the Muslims, and if we take Saudi or we co-opt Saudi Arabia and they're our main focus, and then we make a deal with Iran. I mean, we're dealing with the heavy power players outside of Israel, and the idea of ISIS, even the name ISIS, I think is deferred to ISIL because ISIS as the Egyptian goddess, as the ode of the underdog, and that whole thing. I think to co-opt the word ISIS and to implement it is actually it's actually a deterrent. I think it's funky that we've placed that word on them as title because we keep shifting. The West keeps shifting titles of whomever we're warring against, and it's almost
marketing.
Interestingly, on that point, fucking butt in. Did you know the Viet Cong weren't actually ever called the Viet Cong?
Mm-hmm.
They were the Viet Minh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no,
The US, the CIA.
There's
the Viet Cong sounded more.
Well, they're doing that with ISIS. They're calling them Daesh or whatever now. Daesh.
Yeah.
I saw a government thing. I forget if it was the Russians or us blowing up this ISIS bank.
And it was the same with Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda was a CIA designation. So, you know, marketing plays very heavily in U.S. foreign policy.
Rewind, especially to Kevin, I wonder if you know this, or even you probably know the basic history to just go, think about this. As far as reality of cooperation between Iran and Israel, when we were selling those arms, when Reagan was all in the Iran-Contra, and basically probably there was the October surprise of arranging that release. But anyway, we know there was contact. What we know about that, a lot of that contact went through the fact that when the Shah was in Iran, their secret service was very close with the Israeli Secret Service, right? And then when there's a revolution, you come in, what do? You hire all new people? No, a lot of people figure out ways to stay, whether through their own trickery or they prove they're useful. Yes, I'll be loyal. Anyway, they had Secret Service Iranians that spanned the revolution. And that's who the Israelis were talking about, and those people are still in Iran. So there's actually a tradition in the black ops world, maybe it's a silver lining of the black ops world, that they love dealing with enemies under the table. And so in reality, I'm not sure that we've ever actually dropped our links between Israel from the U.S. through Israel to Iran and back, not in the mainstream, but in the, the CIA world.
That's what the CIA does.
Can any of you speak to the idea of like the economics, meaning the like internet's dominating the world? It seems as if it's going to happen, but we got the TTP, we got NAFTA as a precedent in terms of America, and maybe Kevin can speak of that, being on the other side of the pond. But what I'm suggesting is the idea of instituting a socialist that doesn't disclaim the TPP, it doesn't disclaim NAFTA. Like Trump is trying to reel it back in to American hegemony and regionalism within our borders. But I don't know how what I'm saying is are we looking for? Do you guys want a global type of world understanding and police, like an approach, a paradigm, or would you rather it be biodiversic? Regionally diverse, religiously diverse, or how are you guys? What
I think there has to be a global. There has to be a global system, but I believe in federation. I believe so you can kind of have a little bit of both. But I think there does have to be a global system, and the reason I say that is because I didn't always want that. It's not what I necessarily wanted innately, but there already is one. International corporations already control the world. They're more powerful than any of our Western nations, than any nation, arguably, except for China. The corporations run things.
As soon as globalization kicked off, the nation state was doomed, basically, because you can't have one rule in one country and one in another, and they're able to rub along the same.
Can I cut in for a second? This is an interesting discussion. I wish I could continue it with you. I have to cut out. I got another show to do, but I wanted to thank everybody here for the civil discourse.
All right, thanks.
And it was quite nice. Thank you.
Well, civil but animated. I think that's great too. Yeah, please come back. Yeah, I enjoyed.
Peace.
It is interesting to speak of global powers, and I know there's only a few of us here. But Kevin, you were speaking to this, and Piero, you kind of precedented, like you didn't used to believe in globalism, but now you're thinking it must be. And I'm almost like falling into that order myself, but it's kind of a relief of certain, what I'd say are like a regional, maybe even an anti-historic American approach or idealism. I don't know. I'm not quite certain how it will feather out, but I'm curious of your thoughts on globalism versus nation states, and then Stanley Fischer as he's running a lot of the Fed with Janet Yellen. He's on the board, right? He's half Israeli, meaning he's got dual citizenship with Israel, and so this notion of the Federal Reserve, the petrodollar, the world's reserve currency, dominated by the client state of Israel's client, Stanley Fischer, and Janet Yellen. I think these two are owning something, and they're getting fed in directive, maybe, I don't know by whom, but I think that the notion of economy and corporations is hand in hand. They're like, it's a conjunction. And so I don't know. That's where I'm at.
Can I just interject something? I
Yeah,
may
please.
be completely misreading what you were saying there, but and I hope I'm wrong here. Were you suggesting that because this gentleman was half Israeli, that he's somehow a fifth columnist trying to run America's economy for Israel?
I don't allow the like to me, the association, the fact that he is a dual citizen, it makes him suspect, right? So I allow the suspicion to come in the implication, as much as I allow a notion that there's somehow he's serving the better interests of the West.
What I think is funny about distrusting a non-citizen is the trust it implies for a fellow citizen. It's like, have you not met any of your fellow citizens? I mean, you have to be, it's like, I can't imagine being from another country, even factoring into me trusting an individual, considering how, like, Timothy McVeigh, I mean, how many Americans would I have to mention to say that being a citizen is simply not an indicator of trustworthiness, even for presidency, really. Though I do think it makes sense to have citizen requirements, just because it makes it harder, like having fraud rules. You know, it makes it harder to get, a quick,
Well, I think it's like
job.
all I want to say, if you don't mind, Kevin, all I want to say.
No, absolutely, yeah.
We're having issues with Ted Cruz and another birther Canadian thingy, but nevertheless, above that, above our presidency, is the Federal Reserve. That is really what seemed to me, that's the controlling thing. The presidency is the puppet to the Federal Reserve, and so we got Janet Yellen, we got Stanley Fischer. Stanley Fischer is somehow co-opting from Israel, and that doesn't seem to be a red flag to a lot of people. Some people that know this, it's a red flag to. And I'm just saying, like, he's controlling the U.S. dollar in terms of nepotism, how it's spread out through the Federal Reserve, how it's spread out in all sorts of dimensions, and relative to economies in China and interest rates and all sorts of things. And I think that this is, I'm not saying it is a problem because he is a dual citizen. I'm just noting it as a fact and saying we don't want to take the fact of that dual citizenship as a non-variable. And so it's important because it is a variable.
No, the most I would grant you is it's a clue to wonder who's his loyalties really to. But if you look into it, then you should be able to find out, oh, it doesn't matter. Or, his loyalties were betrayed way before he became a dual citizen. I mean, it's
even if he didn't control the board, I'd say Janet Yellen was already barking at the Israeli. Like we bond with Israel, but we're negotiating with Iran. And so we play this part like Obama is.
You have to, though. That's international diplomacy.
You want to know what I think? This is beyond liberal. I think that we will never have peace in the Middle East until we let things go to their normal state, which is Iran is the dominant nation in the Middle East. I mean, that's how it's been throughout all of history. Persia was the Persian Empire in various forms, right up next to Egypt. And that's basically this normalizing relationships with Iran is the best thing possible because we need to trust them. Their influence is not going to be, they don't want chaos. Iran wants prosperity.
That's never going to happen.
It is going to happen. Are you kidding now? It's for sure.
No, Israel has nuclear weaponry, so that balance of power is never going to be what it was.
Oh yeah.
Because if Israel were ever genuinely threatened in that region, they would use those weapons, and rightly so.
Well, that's
That's
why
just the
my
way things
dream
go.
of, look, if Iran and Israel could be together in the sense that they don't have to be at the same front, opposite fronts, collapsing in on ISIS, then you could have the seeds because obviously
Yeah, there
they
could be
both need
peace,
to
but
be.
what I'm saying is that Iran can never be dominant in that region again without itself gaining nuclear weapons that the West will never allow it to get.
Oh,
So
well,
it's
no,
never
I don't
going
think
to
so.
go
I
back
think
to that.
they could be an economic power, plus they're an intellectual power. They're
Yeah, that's
have
fine.
great engineering. The rest of the region's been destroyed, and it's not like they have to dominate over Israel. I mean, dominate like France and Germany, and not so much Spain these years, but
Well,
maybe next century. I mean,
well, that's not
it
going
could
to
be a
happen either.
competition. Oh no, it is. What do you mean? Now that we've normalized relation with
Iran,
Iran,
Iran's not going to dominate over France and Germany. That's not going to happen, I can
no, no,
assure you.
you're misunderstanding me. I'm saying as if the Middle East were Europe, and you have
Oh, right, okay.
Germany and France going back and forth, and Spain has been a little underdog, but there's no reason that in 70 years it might not be them. Again, it's been a few hundred, but it could happen, and that kind of thing. So it's not like a total hegemony, but I mean, Iran needs to have a strong influence. They will help normalize over time the situation in the rest of those countries over there. And I don't mean invade and operate them as satellites, but I mean just have an ordinary, non-isolated influence. Iran is really an intellectual, it's a powerhouse of history, really. It should not be snubbed into nothing and raped for its oil forever.
Yeah,
They need to
no,
be allowed to step
I,
up and rise again and be the kings that they were, and that's just, what's the problem
I,
with that?
I absolutely agree that the nation should be allowed to do that. But unfortunately, whilst they have the totalitarianism of their current ruling class, and B, the religious bigotry inherent within those people, within the ruling class, not within normal. Because
Yeah, I don't think it's
Iranians will
inherent.
ever meet are lovely people, actually, and like you say, it
Yeah.
is an absolute historically has been an
It's an
intellectual powerhouse.
intellectual, sweet coffee drinking culture. I do not believe that it is inherent in them. That's a reaction to gotten raped for their oil by BP and the rest of
Well,
us in
the
the
thing
U.S.
about Iran is also like, I mean, if you think of worldwide hegemony, right? Google and Apple are already infiltrating. They're already established in Iran. We don't speak about it. We don't talk about it. It's not presented. But the thing is it is the case. They are probably the most progressive of the Muslim states compared to like Saudi Arabia. Let's
Well,
say
look,
they're not
dude,
a war.
it's incontrovertible. They had a really radical, fanatical religious movement that took over the country, which has softened over time since then. Loosened things up, allowed people to be able to see Western media and stuff. Compare that to, North Korea or Cambodia. This is not a normal thing. I mean, basically what happened is they went back to their fundamental religion because they were getting raped by the oil industry for, 100 years, 150,
Well,
well,
I have to say one
50
of the things I'm
years.
finding so distasteful out of the current, I think the current situation in terms of the lifting of sanctions and stuff, I think is a huge step forward potentially.
Yeah,
But one of the
totally.
things I find incredibly distasteful is the like fucking hungry dogs with meat before them, ways in which the Western companies are so voracious in wanting to get into Iran and rape them from all they can
Oh
straight
yeah,
away.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
They're,
yeah.
they're
Good luck
just
with that.
they're foaming at the mouth to get in there. It's
Yeah, yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think Iran will pretty much have its pick, and will probably pick well because they have softened. They do care about their infrastructure of their country. They have an absolute religious leader that nonetheless has allowed a democratic process to the point where he's like, I'm not sure we should normalize these relationships, but I don't see, God hasn't told me to overrule democracy, and he could. So that's a really good sign compared to a lot of the other so-called fanatical governments. And the same thing with Cuba. It's like, well, there's some fanatical things you could say, the way he kept power all that time and blah, blah, blah. But really, it was a pretty hard situation. And he did make the Cubans have a longer life expectancy than Americans at this point, I think.
Yeah, that's the one great,
There's
the one
that.
incredible stat. The third world nation of Cuba has a lower infant mortality rate
Yeah.
than the richest nation that Earth has ever produced.
Because they focused on, a certain kind of infrastructure and just proved that you can, and it wasn't perfect. And with the Iranians, I think we'll just see, we'll see the moderation of the religion into just total normalcy. Like we'll be buying Iranian cars or something. I mean, they haven't, I mean, the thing is, the way they went, look at what happened to Iraq. At this point, the way Iraq went, they've lost their entire intellectual capital. Their engineers, multi-generational families of doctors and lawyers, dead or gone to other countries.
I know
It's
we've
just like,
fucked over. We've decimated so much shit that was already there that was building. And maybe, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Kevin, I don't know your response to Palestine in general. I wish we could buy like Yugo-type cars from Palestine or even Iraq or Iran. I wish there was some production. Even Saudi Arabia was what the prince was saying, look, Muslims don't innovate. We need to learn as Muslims to re-innovate, but their particular brand of Muslimism, that there's something more grounded. It's more primitive. It's not up to date.
it's not Muslims.
But
Dude,
I was
no,
going to
it's because of the plantation mentality. We go over there, you take the oil, starting with the UK actually, you take the oil, it's just like taking the copper from Africa. You don't make shit out of the copper. You don't make the copper pipes in Africa, because then the Africans would make money off of making copper pipes. So you steal the copper and you bring it over. We did that with the oil. That's the lack of innovation, and again, totally provable, because there's such a long history of innovation with the Muslim cultures that it's post this experience of getting raped for their oil.
Trust me, as a British person, my country's entire recent history and entirely its economic strength came from directly that. From raping, from getting diamonds from underneath South Africa, from stealing the oil of Arabia before the Arabians got their ideas together and actually formed their own countries and stuff.
Yeah.
Stealing tea from India, forcing the Chinese to take our opium and heroin. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because with the British Empire, a lot of the really profitable gimmicks were once there. The smoke was in the wind. It was obviously the global empire couldn't totally last. There were strains, and there was limits finally. Like, we can't just do whatever we want with China, and so compromises were made. We're like, well, we don't have to come into China. We could just take blah blah blah, and we'll get the heroin. And they did that a couple different places and made a shit ton of money, and put it in banks, and then became experts in banking. It was a pretty clever move by. Usually losing dictator types, they hold on to the very end and they lose anything and their heads ends up on a spike. And the British power elite and the bankers were like, they managed to say, well, let's just collect a lot of money. We got 70 years, it looks like. And then they put it all in the bank, and now they run the world through banking.
Yeah, to a degree. I think America's pretty high up on that scale now, but yeah.
There's people from all over the world in the regional thing, but I think really it is true that British banking is sort of at the core. When you look at the hegemonies that really exist in the world, it's basically the banks run things regionally often, right? Because banks are kind of regional, but it's more by the banks, and that's still a lot of that money goes through. Money that international American companies make in dollars, the British banks have kept in on it. So, yeah, but obviously they're not the only ones. And one of the reasons America has the influence it has in the world, whatever it is because we have some banks, but then they don't really care about America. And I got to say that it's the banking culture centered in London that's running everywhere but China.
Yeah. Oh, there is. I think you can tell quite how much power they have by the fact that even though they nearly brought the world's economy to the ground less than a decade ago, that nothing was done. Literally, fuck all was done to try and curb that culture,
I
and
know.
it's just gone on.
And they're
And the
still
banks are
making
the
the
only people
record
that have been
profits.
yeah, they've been making
Just a
money.
little, yeah.
Whilst every other uh, group, every other industry has been getting fucked over, the banks have been raking it in all this time.
Well, this guy I have up on this icon, Henry George. He's very interesting. His theory is that the reason that even as we get better farming, better robotic tech, why are the people, the people that live off their labor, they're as poor as ever. They're always at this bottom. And his answer is basically it goes into rent. The value of property will rise by whatever amount above bare subsistence for the labor and the capital. His theory is the capitalists, the people that have money to loan some guy that wants to start a business, they're also getting screwed. It's whoever owns the land, and it's a mathematical thing. As far as I can see, he proves it, that's where the extra money goes for. That's why a farm worker from Mexico working it with much better technology comes up and makes just enough to live, just like a farm worker 400 years ago made just enough to live off of his farm. It goes into property value.
Yeah,
And
there was actually really interesting just before the French Revolution. I can't remember the guy's name, possibly Ribet or something like that. He was the French economic advisor to King Louis, and his economic policy was basically an honest version of capitalism. He said that the wage for a peasant, because they used the word peasant back in those days, the wage for a peasant should only be that which allows him to live and nothing more. Because basically he went down the idea that basically if you gave them any more money, they would just drink it away.
right,
That was his thing. It was almost like they were being benevolent by only paying them enough just barely to
right,
live.
right.
Okay,
Well, no, but the
hang
thing
on.
is,
Here, let me just exhale here for a moment, deflate for a moment, slow down for a moment, right? Like I was thinking about Arthur Rimbaud, right? Whom young poet, when he became 40, he made his wealth in poetry, but then he divested himself and he flung himself into Africa, and then he died obscurely, right? But what I'm getting at is the idea of, like, one of his great statements is, I come from a people, a genetic DNA, the white people, that function as a gang that likes to topple other people, right? Like
That's not a
manifest
uniquely
destiny
white
is.
thing.
That's what imperialism is. That's what that's what we do. We invade, and if we can't dominate, we breed. We breed out certain things.
Dude, that's not a uniquely white thing. People of all colours throughout human history have been doing exactly the same
yeah.
thing.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, well,
We won the last round, though. We won the last round.
right, but our banks, the banking industry is not of this gang, right? And however you want to classify this thing that is trying to at least evaluate and press itself outwardly against China, against Iran, against the brown population, against Indonesia, against Cuba, against Haiti, against all population. Like we're integrating not only phenotypically, genetically. We're doing this. This is just happening. I think that the thrush of a nation state, of an attempt to control power. Like I used to be more of an anarchist, of a fight the man kind of thing, and I'm not that, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's really weird now in the modern day to get a greater notion of global dynamics, how the dynamics of control and policy and economy is actually affecting other sentient beings as they labor and they reproduce and they fight and they sell themselves off or sell other shit off in order to incorporate into this ecology of currency.
Yeah.
And I think there's something problematic. So I keep going back to whom in China and whom in the Federal Reserve and whom in Great Britain and who are these controllers of A, interest rates, B, finance, and B, selling
Okay.
off and buying bonds and different interests in the economy.
Let me go back to, okay, fine, because I think that's I don't know, okay, but I think that's the question. Yeah, so the deal is, like Kevin was talking about, okay, so the idea and there was royalty around that the peasant should get a poverty wage. Well, in America and democratic places, you expected that would change, right? Because here's the question that he was answering, which I had wondered myself my whole life, is like, you get more robotics. It makes it easier to make cars, and yet there's more poverty. That's going to create poverty. The fact that it's easier that one man can till 100 acres, he should be more rich. He's going to make way more corn per person. And not only do other people get fired because you don't need as many people to run the farm and they're poor, that you could expect, but even that guy working the fucking farm doesn't make more money in the end, right? So how does that happen? Why do we have a progress and it doesn't spread among the people, right? Where does that value go?
Only enough to reproduce in terms of teleologic genetic expression. You have to, like an organ, like a genetic evaluation. You have to live.
It was supposed to be the king's fault, though. After the kings are gone, how come it's still going on?
There's
you know,
no
really,
king.
New York wasn't supposed to have impoverished people, in a sense.
Say that again.
Well, like, or wait, okay, let me say a different but same thing in a different example. So you have New York is a new city from a European standpoint. You have San Francisco, even newer, and New York is sort of an old city compared to San Francisco. And there was a time you were starting to see this extreme poverty in New York as it was becoming really rich or had been rich, but not as extreme as you saw in London, which was even richer. And in California, the poorest of these cities overall at the time, I mean in San Francisco, you didn't have that kind of poverty. Everybody had money to gamble and spend in the saloon.
What about Beijing at the time? What about South Korea? What about Indonesia? What of all these others? Tell me about their poverty relative.
It's always relative to how much the land is open and free and cheap of rent. Where land is cheap of rent, working class people do well. And then their work makes it more valuable, and they get fucked over, priced out, and some of them leave, and some of them end up totally impoverished in the city.
I'm going to interject. Two things I want to interject. One, what of the nation states?
Well, I had another question.
What of the nation
I'm getting
states
confused.
that are laboring for our material consumption, and then what of trade or?
Wait a second, Michael. Can we table that for a second? Because I want to ask one thing. I had a little agenda, I think, and Kevin was commenting last week, so I saved it here. And this is a question I'm kind of curious, because I've gotten in a little heat, as far as I can tell, liberal and conservative side both. Okay, I believe in this philosophy of you take responsibility for the past. Like, I take responsibility for screwing the Dakota Indian out of the Black Hills in here in America, where they got it. And then we found gold there. Custer found gold there, and we just took it back, you know. And the biggest gold mine actually ever in the planet is there. And I believe we take responsibility for things, you know. So this, you know what I'm talking about, the sort of things you might have to pay reparations for. Or Japan, no government official or living person actually raped any Chinese people. Or Korea, you know, they didn't do those war crimes, but they should take it's good to take responsibility. It's not something.
They recently did. The Japanese government officially apologised and begun paying reparations for the convict women to which you refer.
Yep, I know. I saw that, and I've been talking about this really my whole, 8 years, but a lot lately before that happened. But in all honesty, it's because I saw they were having these negotiations, and it's slowly been happening over the years. It takes a while. Frankly, a few people that did do the rapes had to die off because they're never going to admit that. But there's a great couple documentaries on the whole Indonesian thing, how, in the Indonesian situation, they killed the current government back in the 60s, killed 1 million Indonesians, just slaughtered them, slaughterhouse, I mean, Nazi plus style, and they're still the government, and what do you do in a situation like that? They're not probably able psychologically to take the kind of responsibility. Some of them are, though.
Piero, do you think that China is, do you think that they're thwarted entirely by the Western invasion? Meaning, are they co-opting their...
Well, let me bring it back to,
let me ask the question in completion. Do you think they're co-opted by the West in terms of, like, they're maintaining a communism with an allowances to capitalism, but they're trying to remain a dynasty, if you will, of, like, there's certain people in China...
The Chinese are more capitalist than us, so that's the way that's going to wash out. I want to reform that question, though, back into responsibility. And so, Kevin, for example, then, you brought up the whole opium war. Turns out that's huge. Now we're having opium... overdoses in the U.S. just all over, crazy, like one a week in rural Maine.
That's down to the Afghanistan war, isn't it?
So, yes, but I was going to say it was because Britain, Queen Victoria got Asia hooked on opium, and the Asians were over here, and that's how we all learned to use it outside of the pharmacy. Probably would have happened anyway. Okay, asterisks, blah, blah, blah. But do you feel, what kind of responsibility as a society, a voter, an individual, but also just as a voter, voting what to do with your government's money and the taxes, I mean, how much responsibility do you think it's appropriate for you, for example, to feel for that? Or other crimes?
Well, it's difficult, obviously, because I didn't do anything. So that, I mean, that's it. It's sort of, it seems it's easy to get defensive and say, "Oh, you didn't do anything, therefore, X, Y, and Z." But you do have to accept a certain amount of responsibility, because I think a very good point was made to me once. I can't remember who said it, but it was a very good point. He said, "You benefit from it every day." The British education system would be a fraction of what it was had the things I mentioned earlier. Like, I mean, the opium war was a small part of it. I mean, like, the amount of diamonds and gold we got from underneath South Africa, that nation should be fucking absolutely rich as fuck. But we absolutely raped it. The amount of oil we've stolen from around the world, all of that, the British economy would be a frail, pathetic, shriveled version of what it is now had we not done that. So I have benefited enormously from those things.
Hey, in your defense, you European guys, you did create international commerce. So okay, I say fair deal. But anyway, go ahead about your crimes.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, but it was a very good line about the British Empire was both Britain's greatest achievement and biggest crime.
I mean, isn't international commerce...
That's what nature is.
Hey, Piero, isn't international commerce the crime that you're referring to?
No. And also, it's like with people.
Why not?
Look, it's like with people. Your faults, this is a Nietzschean thing, but your faults and your strong points are related. You're really bullheaded. Well, then you don't take shit and you fight for equal rights sometimes, but also we're an asshole at a party. I mean, your faults and your strengths go together, and so it actually can be like that. I mean, the global ambitions of all empires had benefits. The fact that the Romans connected roads, you could peacefully travel from Britain all the way down to Italy, that was a benefit. The VW bug Hitler commissioned was a benefit. You just got to face facts, and it's not like there's a black and white, and how that works is this simple way.
Just saying
On the other hand, the crimes of the U.S. and the UK, and also of the Dutch people, are big enough to still feel responsible for. That is the rape that has fucked up the world into the chaotic mess it is today, and it's totally fixable. I mean, we should not be at war in the Middle East because they have something valuable. If nobody was trying to steal it from them, it would be a great thing, right?
Well, okay, let me just once again deflate and exhale and then ask this. Do you think that our war against the Middle East, the Euro-Western, American Euro value is as a secular and or Christian whatever extension different from Islam? Is that really what the war is about, or is it multivarious? Is it more complex than that? Meaning, what I'm saying is does the infusion of the dominant population of the Middle East popping at its seams, and we invade Iraq, we invade Syria, we fuck up Libya, we fuck up all this shit, right? And we stir it, and now it's a spin pot, right? And this has nothing to do with China, Asia, or even that whole area, right? They're not migrating there. They're migrating into the Western culture. And I'm just asking, what was it? What is it that is, if it's not ideology itself, is it population? Is it brown people? Is it what the fuck is it that is causing
Okay,
this
look, I
division?
don't understand that. Okay, first of all, I don't think that's true. Usually in this kind of situation, you have a lot of people going to those. It's not just to the West. That's just the only ones our news people care about. I think if you look at it, you will find tons of people going to India and other probably smarter places to go, right? And so, but two, I believe that it's not even, I'm sick of it even being a question. Look, the British discovered oil in Iran in like 1910. They raped the fucking Iranians over the oil. They had thousands of families living together in big sheds and shit. They did not teach them how to be engineers and take part in the oil industry, and they just stole it. And history even shows that they also didn't pay for all the oil they took back to Britain. They also cheated on the oil that they actually fucking paid for, even as raw oil. Then the Americans, they never thought there was going to be oil elsewhere in the Middle East. This was before it was all over. They found oil in Saudi Arabia eventually after finding it in other places around Iran and stuff. And the Americans gave the Saudi royal family, who had just taken over the region around that time, a little bit before, they aren't traditional leaders of, there is no such, they named Saudi Arabia after their family. It isn't really like a place more than 200 years.
Most of those borders are just lines on a map.
Yeah, and then the U.S. companies gave the Saudi royal family like a 50-50 deal on the oil profits. And the Iranians were like, "Huh? Well, how about that? You know, come on, what the fuck?" And the British were like, which this became BP Oil, Anglo-Iranian Oil, I think it was called at the time. They're like, "Fuck no, that's not our deal." And they ended up electing, thinking they had a free government, you know, a relatively socialist guy, I guess you could call it, since he was going to nationalize the oil industry. And then the U.S. and the U.K., with the guy named Kermit Roosevelt, did the coup and put the Shah in for another fucking 30 years. Okay.
No,
so
I know. Okay,
that's why they're pissed off. That's the
But
whole
hang on,
fucking thing right there.
Like back. Okay, back.
It all comes from that. Every other country.
Rockefeller versus Tesla. Rockefeller versus Tesla. Oil as fossil fuel. Oil as abiotic.
You mean Edison?
Oil as reserve energy. Oil as a propagated notion, as opposed to like and then bring it current, right, to the idea that progressives and Democrats, at least in the U.S., function on solar and wind and alternative energy as opposed to the historic energies. Like mix the dialogue into where we are going.
Mike, it's all nuclear. Nuclear, we're gonna call it. Safe nuclear. Work for the coal.
God damn it, you're all nuclear and shit.
Yeah, no, I believe there's safe nuclear, and so it's a no-brainer. Free energy.
Something has to be done, because you can't rely on a resource that you know will run out.
Yeah.
You're building a house on quicksand, and eventually
Yeah,
the
and I
cockroach is
think
gonna
the
sink.
thing is with the biodiesel kind of thing, if you grow enough stuff for biodiesel, it uses up a lot of land and stuff. So it's actually
Yeah,
resource intensive that way.
there's
And the outputs are not clean. So yeah, you got to
you
go
know,
off of that burning.
Kevin,
rapeseed farmers in South America, because it makes good biofuel, have cut down huge swathes of the Amazon
Yeah.
rainforest. And not just
Well,
that,
or
but
even
they're
not
not
even look
used
at that.
because they're selling it on. There's actually
Yeah.
significant problems with malnourishment because they're
But
not
they
using
could
the
also
land.
be growing strawberries or something too. Even if you said, "Well, cut it down. We need stuff for people." You know, there's better things for
Yeah,
people than
yeah,
having to spend all of those acres. Because what? I mean, one car must take 100 acres to fuel all year. You know, it's not very energy efficient per acre
yeah.
of
No,
a
that was my
thing.
point. It's not that they're even using that land productively for their local people. There's
Yeah,
huge amounts of malnourishment, not quite
yeah,
starvation, but because they're selling on all the food that they're growing there for fuel rather than to actually make edible um, stuff
yeah,
for themselves. You've
exactly.
got huge problems with malnourishment in areas that are incredibly fertile, which is like the
Yeah,
first time in human history that's ever happened. It's
right.
ridiculous.
So I think this, basically thorium, which is plentiful and doesn't need to be refined, and you could have thorium nuclear. It's got nuclear radiation, but it can't melt down and go out of control because, frankly, that is just an old first-generation nuclear idea, and it's for making
I'm
plutonium bombs.
I'm with you to an extent, but I'm always skeptical when I'm told this can't happen.
Well, I mean, I could tell you
It
specifically what
happen.
could happen. The part
Well,
that can't happen is that meltdown because you don't have a bunch of solid rods that can overheat out of control,
yeah,
right? It's
I
a
think there's always a historic lesson to be learned from something like the Titanic. When you go around boasting it can't sink, you know the fucker's
But
gonna
look, for
sink.
example, let's say I say that, I'm building this skyscraper, it can't sink.
huh?
A
Yeah, I don't think.
skyscraper, it can't sink, right? Because it's on land, right? It's on
Well, it
land, so
depends
it
what
won't
kind of
sink. It
land.
could fall down. Other things could happen to it. And that's what I'm saying. There's certain kinds of disasters that a current nuclear design is, like Fukushima, is prone to, that a liquid nuclear reactor just is not prone to that. It's the difference between being out to sea and being able to sink or being on land. It cannot melt down in that same way. It has other disasters it's prone to, which are radioactive in nature, but
My okay, thorium. That's an interesting approach. I've heard you for at least a couple of years argue with Amendum about thorium and argue in its favor, which I think is fine. But I mean, geothermal and different oceanic wave energies and different
no,
different.
but let's start here. Let me ask you a
All
question so
systems.
I can learn something out of this.
But hang on, before you do this, like Kevin mentioned, we were talking about the rainforest. We were talking about deforestation in a manner, and to me, that is almost maybe more crucial to talk about that because that is such a huge bed of our atmospheric environment is generated from that area, and I don't just want you to like co-opt it into thurium energy. I would like if you could, Piro, to speak about the deforestation as a capitalistic problem in terms of a curative process. Anybody that could ever speak about buying out properties or stopping that deforestation because of its effect on the world atmosphere, I think is maybe more important. I don't know.
Well, why is it a problem if it maybe not reforesting is the problem?
Well, when you got a bunch of stumps and you're trying to reforest, you got a root issue, you got a root variable issue because you're trying to regrow new plants in old dead area. They only go so high because their ground where they're trying to reach is already rooted. There's problems with trying to over implement reforestation in a deforestation.
But there's problems and
There's
solutions. And actually, an interesting point that you make, because it might be harder to reforest land that you clear cut. Might be a good reason not to clear cut, but than it is to stop desertification and reclaim desert where there is no root structure. And the grass actually, the brings its own, basically the peat kind of process. I mean, when it's ancient, but brings its own nutrients and whatnot, and can attack the desert and get grasslands back from desertified things. So I think there's mostly a lot of solutions, and actually I would like to talk about the thorium in that. I mean, I'm curious, something I could learn. I mean, you guys understand the idea of a meltdown, right? Is you get these solid fuels reactors. If you don't cool those rods, they'll heat up until the uranium melts, and it's like lead. You know, if you melt lead and could keep it hot, it could go bore all the way to the center of the earth because it's hot enough to melt anything, basically. And it won't melt anything, it'll go around. It's like a drop of mercury or liquid water in the ground. So in Fukushima, that stuff melts. It melts down. It could go arbitrarily far into the crust, right down to the lava layer. But of course, it'll be following a lot of little fingers of ways that are easier to go, and it ends up polluting a huge area and certainly penetrating the water table. That's the catastrophe that cannot happen with a thorium liquid or even a uranium liquid reactor, but certainly a thorium reactor, because of the way the critical mass, the way the basic physics works. It's like saying, you know, I can get myself hurt on a pogo stick that I won't get from skipping along. You know, I mean, it's like, it's just that different. You have to look at the details, but in the end, and then the other thing is that there's thorium all over. We have like 1,000 years worth of thorium just from the Manhattan Project in the U.S. It would power our current U.S. needs if we had thorium reactors around to use it for 1,000 years. Right now, we just have it stored as nuclear waste.
So then a weird concept to throw at this conversation. Okay, let's say there's globalism. Let's say we're one world economy. Let's say we solve the energy problem, we solve the atmospheric problem, we solve certain problems, right? Let's say that. Then is a worldwide hegemony. Do we want non-bios and regional and cultural diversity? Meaning, do you just assume that cultural diversity is becoming extinct? Either A, because of the internet, B, because of economics, or B, because of energy needs and manifest destiny and dominance. How is it that you guys would want, between Kevin and Piero, or in all three of us, how do you want the world to look in 50 years? I'm just curious.
I'm not entirely sure I understand what you mean.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is project 50 years to now in the most secular, pragmatic approach to how you think both energy and economy, nation states, and populations, religious ideologies. How do you imagine a world that is put together? That is a functioning globe of worldwide emergence of the next generation that is not divided in some manner. Maybe I'm being ideal in the question.
Well, I don't think the nation state will completely crumble as a concept, but I think you'll get more of the kind of federalism of, say, places like Europe. You'll get more of a kind of conglomeration based on geographical region rather than individual nation states, because they just can't survive. Because McDonald's Corporation and Coca-Cola and Microsoft are too big now for individual nation states to not be picked off. Whereas with the European Union, you're just about big enough to be able to fight back. And I
Yeah,
think that's the
like
way
this
it will go.
TPP. Here's where I'm countering with some of the liberals, my liberal brethren or whatever. I am against it in a sense. I think it's a bad thing, quote unquote, but it's part of this inevitability of creating huge transnational organizations, some of which become national organizations and ideally could be federated, where each member nation has a lot of freedom, but there's certain things like, you know, you can immigrate easily. That's a nice one, when you can emigrate easily. But even being able to sell stuff easily is a start. So I think, though they're imperfect and it'll screw over workers, and as a labor activist, I think that's fucked up. I think our approach almost has to be something that takes these kinds of agreements into account, right? Like if we go make it so that they get paid better in India and China, then we'll get paid better. You know, we can't be isolationist. We almost have to embrace this openness and then make sure wages aren't attacked through other ways, which in the next 10 or 20 years being impossible. I mean, I was against it. I wish it didn't pass through. I could think of a smoother way to do it. It's meant to hurt workers in the generational time span. But it's like if I was a Republican with Obamacare, it's like, well, we're going to have to go forward from here. There's a point at which you can't try to turn back the clock. So, hey, I had another question too. I'm going to have to take a break, and so before I do that, because sometimes the room falls apart. Let's just jump ahead. I had a couple things I think we actually discussed earlier about multi-activism and peace versus war, and the fact that we people that call ourselves peace activists or feminists or whatever, labor union, whatever, we're fucking all pretty much egalitarians. Get off our back, because we pretty much are the egalitarians, motherfuckers. So yeah, that word's great. You're talking about us. You still have to prove you care about. But anyway, I'm skipping that. What about this regressive? I wrote it down wrong in my. What do they call it? It was SJW. That's still around, but now it was even in the press, I think, a little bit. Not regressive liberalism. What they call it? Regressive.
The regressive left.
The regressive left, right. And to me, because I was like the guy sketchy that left earlier, you know, there was certain liberal, PC, the word politically correct came out when I was in college at Berkeley, and it was like, what? Because I thought liberals, we're the non-dogmatic ones. We're open-minded. Hey, maybe Catholic Mass is great. We are open-minded and liberal to what other people think is cool. Hey, maybe that is cool. I don't know, but that's my idea. It was anti-dogma, and so politically correct was so clearly like a dogmatic way of looking at it. And yet, of course, I'd rather have a politically correct country than, you know, Jack Webb and, you know, McCarthy and these American kind of fascist types. So anyway, boom, zip, rewind. My point is, what do you think about this search? They always have some name for us, right? SJW. I thought that was okay. Maybe I'm an SJ peace activist instead. But anyway, any comments on this?
Does that go both ways? I mean,
do I get to have silly names for the right?
Well, yeah, I mean,
like up there in Oregon, Vanilla ISIS. Y'all,
I never heard that one.
Y'all, Qaeda.
I like that.
My favourite one was Walmarters.
Walmart.
They're trying to impose Sharia law.
Oh no.
IL 15 law.
No, I think it's just you know, you're talking about like debate style, and I guess it'd be heuristics or whatever, where you have okay, so one group calls another group a certain name, whatever, that's a signifier, that's a pejorative, and then the other group calls that group a counter pejorative, right? So now the thing with regressive is the regressive left is a response to people who call themselves progressives, or a movement that calls themselves progressives, but they're going more towards a almost like a conservative thing.
Yeah,
like,
I'm fine with that one. That discriminates between some so-called leftists and myself. Fine, go for it. On the other hand, if you use it to attack some random middle of the road Anita Sarkeesian that's hardly this way nor that way from my point of view, I'll jump up and say, okay, yeah, it's just like I'm not a warrior, I'm a peace activist, but I'll be a SJW when you keep attacking people that obviously is attacking my belief system.
In terms of the labels that they've chosen, you know, there's all sorts, like the Cook, SJW, whatever, all these fucking absurd things. And essentially, because
oh, that's a fun one. The
a
Cook thing.
lot of,
Interesting, actually.
yeah, a lot
I'd like
of
to
the
talk about that.
anti-feminist people are based
Jenny.
so much around hate and negativity in so many cases. They start using it on one another, like say just here on YouTube.
Yep.
Thunderfoot has called War Corp 666 an SJW, who is like the most anti-SJW person on the fucking website. Davis Orini called Sargon of Akkad a social justice warrior. So eventually, all the people that use those kind of phrases end up calling someone else it on the basis they have some minor disagreement.
But look at the beauty of that. I'm familiar with those guys. I'm familiar with those guys, War Corps and whatnot. And compared to Thunderfoot, War Corps is an SJW, but I missed that one. And as far as Sargon of Akkad or Assad, I always forget which it is. He is interesting in, I think, the genuineness of his, to a certain degree, just not giving a shit, but giving enough of a shit to say what he thinks. But no, I'm not an MRA. I'm not really wanting to be in your gang, you guys. I'm sorry. And, you know, and so again, from their point of view, there's a legitimacy to those two guys being on the SJW side of an arbitrary line you can always draw wherever.
Yeah, but my basic point was, because they've started to eat one another with that phrase, they've now come up with another phrase, basically.
Yeah. Well, so I'm not afraid of the phrases, but you always got to play one way or the other. Like when the SJW thing was coming in, I'm like, well, I'm an SJW. I can tell right off you're talking about me. And then I'm like, well, I am not a warrior because, like, I've read a bunch of stuff. Like there was an old book, Spiritual Warrior, and always the use of warrior. And I am a peace activist. I think the war metaphor is fucked up. I don't want the war on poverty as oxymoron, war on drugs. Right, so I don't want to be an SJW, but I was still like, I'm an SJW. Yeah, war on war. Yeah, so but even given that, I'm like, well, obviously I am an SJW because Thunderfoot and people are attacking people under that label that obviously include me from their descriptions. You know what I mean? So you always have to make a judgment call. Whereas regressive left, I'm not going to be the regressive left. I'm going to go like, yeah, there's fake people that just say they believe one thing, and maybe they honestly don't understand it well enough to realize where they've gone wrong, or maybe they're just hucksters. Yeah, regression. And that's kind of what I was saying. I mean, as a philosophy student, it was sort of, to me, the difference between dogma, where you think you have the answers, you could write it in a book. Maybe you haven't written the book yet, or sometimes there is a book. And versus skepticism, where, hey, I think I know what makes sense to me now, but you've got some evidence. I'll look at it for the weekend. We'll figure out. Maybe I got to change. You know, you keep an open mind. It's as simple as that. And I thought liberalism, when I was younger, was the open-minded part, the non-dogmatic. But what's become clear is every so-called school of thought has its dogmatic people versus its skeptical
You're
and
saying
open-minded.
you adhere to some ideology. You adhere to some particular aspect that you'd say this is heroism that has this spectrum within it, and you adhere. Meaning, I'm just saying, if you're going to say,
no, I'm saying I don't adhere.
Well, you say you don't adhere, but you seem to fall within a camp.
Well, there's always a meta system you could say I adhere to, but no, I'm constantly trying to improve my ideas. It's a collection thing where it's like, this is the best I've found for building a card house. Oh, look, now I can do it a level higher. I learned a new way. I mean, that's the basic thing. I don't always learn a better way, and I don't necessarily give up my system unless I feel that something's demonstrated, right? But it's different from dogma, because dogma usually, the metaphor is it comes from a book. You got a book that tells you.
No, I know, but skepticism is kind of like the extra exterior of whatever is considered an adherence, a dogma, a claim, and so you're going to remain on the outskirts and be skeptical and run the
No.
perimeter.
No,
Well, hey-
it's really just more how you change your ideas. But anyway, go ahead, someone else.
Oh, I was going to say, as far as SJW as a term, right? I've used it against anti-feminists before. Have you ever heard it used in that context?
Well, what do you mean?
It can be used for feminist or anti-feminist. It's just used against somebody who's not sincere about their cause. That's what the term actually means. It's an urban
Well, it doesn't
term.
actually mean that. You can't take.
Well,
the
no,
word
it actually
social.
means that.
No, you can't. No. Just because people want it to mean that,
No,
you can't take a
that's-
word social.
No.
Critique, I understand. Well, you can have your argument, but I think I understand where you're saying from it. But I'm just saying the word social and justice, the
You're
phrase
right.
social justice and warrior, they have a meaning from at least 500 years probably of those words having meaning in English. You don't get to just say, but what it really means is the opposite of that. I'm being ironic, world.
Well, no, that's what it means. It's an urban term. That combination of
It's
terms
ironic,
is
in
an
other
urban term.
It's meant to talk about
it's
people
not
that
a-
are not for social justice but are warriors. It's
Right,
ironic.
it's not a formal
it's
term.
ironic.
It's not formal.
Yeah.
It's not. It came out of irony. That term. Now you could
Yeah.
say you're a fighter for social justice. You could say that you're for social justice. But the term social justice warrior has always been a
But
pejorative.
Tika, what you don't get is I could totally accept that. I'm ironic. I like underground comics. You and I have a lot of the same. Here my wife is playing Bowie covers in the background. But anyway, so I see that, but I would want to see some acknowledgement of the other side. Then it's just like if people want to say, hey, well, I am an egalitarian, then I want to see you working for where there are unequal rights to equal them. You know what I mean? Not that you as an individual haven't. We've talked. You seem like you have some activism, and besides, it's up to you how much you have. I'm not judging people on that. I'm just saying that it's involved.
I think a lot of people that call themselves egalitarians do so in order to get out of having to make difficult gender-based decisions.
Yeah,
and
just to
take
get
a stance on
specific.
things.
Or not
Well,
even gender-based, but every based. Like, just I don't have to get specific. I don't have to fight for this because everybody should have equal rights.
I've heard that argument. One time I had viewed a video by a girl who claimed she was a feminist, and she said after she was in it for so long, or this group of people who were feminists that she was with, she changed her mind on feminism, and so she was speaking out against feminism. Well, anyway, one guy who was commenting was a anti-feminist, and he starts off the conversation, the comments, by kicking her ass in the comments after she had said that she's not a feminist, right? So I called him an SJW because I was kind of like, well, what are you doing this for? All you're doing is starting a fight with somebody who just agreed with you, and it's just it's that term, and I think it's been hijacked by Oxford lately, or recently in the last year, where they're trying to legitimize the term. But it's not a term that's meant to be
Really, Oxford Dictionary?
Yeah, because what they do is, how
they're the keeper of the English language. They're going to do that.
Right.
But the funny thing is how they've tried. Webster, historically, Webster's claim to fame as an American thing was like, we keep up with new word. Coke is now a word. It means soda and whatnot.
Right.
Whereas Oxford never did that. But of course, on the other hand, they had some great modernizations that took a couple centuries, like letting us split infinitives and end a preposition, a sentence, a preposition with.
Right. Yeah, well, see, the thing is if the language changes to where it's at a point where everyone understands it to be a legitimate signifier, right, like something that actually means what it says, then it'll go out of mode, for people using it as a pejorative, right?
Well, up until it was before, in the early thinkers, it would have been before, but as far as I know, let's just put it this way, by the 60s, there became this idea that words were not defined by their etymology, what they'd used to be used for. It's whatever their current use is, which I think was a good modernization, but I'm a little bit traditionalist. I think it's 50-50. I mean, words do mean what they historically meant. The word skeptic's a perfect example. It doesn't mean doubt in Greek, and to this day, the Greek words for knowing and thinking, it means reflection. It means to ponder. The skeptics were saying our philosophy is the one where you think about stuff forever. You know, not that you doubt. Yeah, sometimes
Right,
you
like a
doubt.
cynic, right?
Yeah, but you also just believe whatever seems to be apparent. It's basically like pondering. You're sort of a philosophical sort, and you're going to be that way forever. You're not goal-oriented, finding the final answer. And so, you know, but anyway, but on the other hand, you can't deny when someone says, I'm a skeptic, they mean what they mean. They don't mean what the word meant 1,000 years ago. So it's got to be 50-50 or a little bit of both. But there is some genealogy to words, right?
Right. Well, even the argument that you had earlier with Sketchy about feminism and how, and I forget how it was worded, but where he was trying to distinguish that there were different types of feminism, and I think you were saying that he was attacking all feminism. Well, the thing is that, well, the question that I would ask is that, is there types of feminism that contradict other types of feminism?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that being the case, that's where a lot of the confusion comes in, because when you're being attacked by somebody, and I'm saying like verbally attacked or whatever, when you're being attacked by somebody that's wearing the banner of feminism, okay, then your response to it is like you're not going to ask them, well, are you this type of feminist or that type of feminist? You're just going to automatically attack feminists, right? And I think the same with anti-feminists. That's what's going on, right? There could be different types of anti-feminists. I mean, they might be against different types of feminism, but cool towards other types, right? So see, that gets really confusing there. In the discourse, because that's why it comes across like it's team A against team B or whatever, right? But it's comprised, each side is comprised of many different conflicting ideologies, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
let's get back to personal stuff. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, Kevin, you first, because I sound really petty to bring up.
If you want to take it down to that really sort of atomized level, then essentially there are lots of feminists who are also anti-feminist because, like, say for instance, I'm a feminist that hates the TERFs, trans-exclusionary radical feminists, and SWERFs.
Right.
So in that sense, I'm an anti-feminist because there are certain schools of feminism that I'm against.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, can we do a little bit of talking about David Bowie, about his influence on culture?
Yeah, I would like to, but...
One sec, you got to let Kisimir's in the room. You got to dock him.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. Yeah. Because I know he'll want to talk about this, and I wanted to bring it up earlier.
Before we go into Bowie, because we do, and we've been playing Bowie songs. I know Bewley Brothers and what's the one? I'm an alligator. I know how to play that one, and kind of, but my wife is better. But anyway, before we do that, I just want to say this brought to mind, just to bring it down to like the kind of thing people really enjoy. Okay, so what is that? Sargon of Akkad or Assad? Akkad.
Akkad.
Okay. I think he's a much better person than Thunderfoot. Like, if we're talking about the kind of message that pisses me off of anti-feminism, Sargon of Akkad is welcome to his free speech opinion in every way, whereas Thunderfoot is sort of a slimy propagandist.
Well, I think Kevin could tell you that he did a hangout with Sargon, and I watched part of that, and I thought it was really well done all the way around. Which, you know, everybody kind of expected it to be a bloodbath, but it was a really cool thing, you know.
Well, you know what? Enemies like that are worth, you know, recognizing. It doesn't mean you agree that that you don't think their ideas are poisonous, but it's just kind of, there's a basic honesty there that's like, well, they're going with what seems to be the case to them, whereas Thunderfoot's kind of like, I don't know, does he really care about feminism, or is he just worried about getting laid at atheist conventions? I mean, I think it's pretty clear which it is. Anyway, okay, David Bowie. That sounds like a good thing to talk about. I love David Bowie. He's a hero of mine. For example, I had a good friend in high school who made a good point that I'm heterosexual, but David Bowie is I would consider being gay if I could sleep with David Bowie.
Hero, you gotta Doc Vic now.
Oh no, this bastard! I always thought he was okay, but Jesus, the
That's
way he's been talking to this lovely woman
in
in my comments, I can't believe the foul mouth of this guy.
Lovely woman.
I'm going
funny.
to have to contact your employer, mister.
That bitch has been harassing me for years. I think it's
So?
about time that the gloves finally
You
came
should
off.
just take it if you were a man. You don't need to be a bitch like that. Back.
No, it's a bitch to take that shit for forever. That's
Okay.
like it's your thing, Piro.
Look, now I'm getting in trouble with my wife. Okay, sorry.
Okay, do you think that David Bowie had a huge impact and influence on the way on sexual mores, right, in culture, and the way that people kind of viewed gender, right, in general?
Oh yeah.
I remember he did. What do you mean? I remember when he was supposedly bisexual, a Playboy interview. Later on, he's like, well, that was actually more marketing. Not that I didn't sleep with some men, but I mean, it's pretty much just marketing. So, you know, but he totally, what do you mean, the whole glam thing? They started that androgyny, certainly not him, but T-Rex and really the whole glam.
Right.
He is the most popular and most awesome genius probably of that whole genre.
Right. Well, you know, Iggy Pop's still in the area here in Detroit. Like he hangs out here a lot, and they, you know, we have like different guys like from the Stooges and stuff like that are still around recording and that. And one of the bands I was in a band called Taste, where we did all like the glam rock kind of thing, did a ton of Bowie stuff, all that other stuff, and it was a weird thing because at the time, okay, this was before Poison came out, and Poison, if you ever seen their photos when they started, they all look like Farrah Fawcett, right? Because that was a new thing, right? And it caught on, and when we did the thing with the makeup, it was weird because we did kind of a you know, like a heavy metal thing, but like classic rock, right? And then the guitarist in the band was like, one night we were playing, and he says, hey, dude, you want to wear makeup and all that? And I was already doing theater before that.
Yeah.
Right? So we did that, and we did the full-blown, you know, all the stuff in it. And the girls went nuts for that. It was crazy, right?
Well,
so,
that's what makes it worthwhile, because other than that, what was going on?
Yeah, well, see, that's what Bowie was talking about, too. He says,
like, I think glam ruined heavy metal. The whole hairband heavy metal part, that mixture of glam and heavy metal, I think, it's like I want my Motorhead.
Well, see, that's
metal.
Well, I mean, by the time the '90s came around, though, the heavy metal was back again, though, in a different way. But I mean, it was influenced at that point by the whole grunge thing. But heavy metal started making a full comeback, and even much more harder edge than it was in the '80s.
That's true. So it might have been a good phase.
Yeah. Well, it
was getting a little over obsessed with Satanism for a while, for example, and this like broadened its horizons. Now it was back to whatever it wanted to do.
Right.
Like, I mean, I was at the age to think Metallica, oh, those young posers. But you know, for example, Metallica and stuff, you definitely had a resurgence of more real metal, even popular.
The glam though of the '70s was very different from the glam of the '80s. In the '70s, it was more about self-expression. Yeah. In the '80s, it was about let's be over the top. Everything is over the top, you know, and it just everything was about consumerism. It just a whole change of mindset came into place. And in the '70s, I don't know, it was more artistic and more self-expressive.
Well, Bowie was really a hero of mine, so I mean, I read a lot of interviews and stuff back in the day. I might be a little bit my memory hazy, but for example, I remember him an interview of him talking about, well, you know, there was a lot of good singers out there in this whole musical thing, you know, and have been going on since the '50s and stuff. So that's why he decided he could sing more dramatically. you know. And I think that's a part of the drama, the makeup, the idea of bringing the show back into it. And yet, in reality, also, I would say that he really did. I mean, I love his voice. See, to me, the whole irony of that is like the whole delicacy of the way he sang songs was incredible. And it was because instead of trying to sing like a classical singer that's thought of as good, he put character into it.
Yeah,
and so that's the glam of the 70s. The same thing with T-Rex. Really like such simple lyrics and yet so deep of a sound in a song, you know.
Is Piro ground control or is Piro Major Tom? I mean, bang your head and...
I'm a Bewley brother.
Well,
it's interesting. Oh,
sorry. Go ahead.
I think it's interesting how his vocals went from, he kind of had this, and the man, and to, you know, he totally, I mean, just complete change, like total 180.
Mm-hmm. That must have been at least in part due to trying to preserve vocal cords over decades.
Possibly.
See, I don't.
Yeah.
Well, I also think
because when he switched to the no one can blame you, you never do anything that would hurt your vocal cords. It'll never wear out on that. So that's a good point.
Right. I think what was cool about Bowie, one of the things about his singing is
it was one of for character. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry,
just spoke. Oh, that's right. Well,
one of the, here. Go ahead, Quintica.
well, one of the things I liked, which was also one of the things I hated, right, is that before he became kind of like a musical institution, right, like the way people looked at him, right, it's like his stuff was all cutting edge, like the singing, the way that his vocal style was, right, and then once he was accepted, because he was great, right, but once he was accepted, it's like he could almost hit any note there was or hit any bad note, and it would still be great just because the image. It's kind of like Peter Gabriel, right? And,
well, he set it up for himself, yeah. You have a very forgiving ear because a lot of the times your forgiveness isn't forgiveness. He actually was hitting a very, like, I really love Bewley Brothers. I mean, and the harmonies and everything, you know, yeah. But on the other hand, if you give him a break like you would give a Bob Dylan of, well, you know, this is how he sings, and yet really it's perfect. I mean, I still think Bowie is pretty much perfect. Like every song he ever recorded.
Well, other than he's a faggot. Okay, go back to you guys.
Well, that's an interesting thing. He promoted himself as bisexual in the 70s as sort of a forefront of people will actually think this is cool. I mean, my fans are going to dig this. It's going to be fine. And it did work out. And he sort of said later it was marketing. And also, of course, it doesn't matter, but I just think it is an interesting issue, like when Quintica was bringing it up, because we're dealing with men that want this or that or whatever perception, or women that want gender perceptions, expectations on other people. It's an interesting, I think, you know, Bowie is definitely an influential figure on the rise of androgyny as a positive.
But as far as theology is God an American?
But that's the thing too. You said faggot. I'm sure you were just joking, but you said faggot. But even as a joke, that would probably be wrong because I really think Bowie pushed androgyny. Right? There was an idea of, hey, just get beyond it. Boom, sexless. Sexless is sexy.
Actually, him and Mick Jagger, and I've read interviews with Mick Jagger where he had said that they had tried to do that, right? And the thing is, there's a really weird kind of psychology behind it. It's like if you go on stage and you try to be androgynous, right? You kind of separate yourself from from the mainstream of humanity or your viewers or whatever. So it's kind of like you become kind of like an icon, right? And Mick Jagger understood that, and Bowie understood that. But I was just watching Hang On to Yourself, which was like a documentary on Bowie, right? And Bowie credits his wife, Angela, for changing his career, for coming up with the idea to come out openly with that and to push the limits of that. Because they said what Bowie said, is if he hadn't have done that, he would have just been another folk singer with poofy hair, right? So she had encouraged him to push that, and then what was funny is when they started doing that, they had to change the record covers to sell it to the United States, but people loved it, right?
Yeah.
And in England they accepted it, and he went from being kind of moderate to just going off the charts, right?
Well, you know,
Right,
you
but
mentioned,
the thing is, the music really totally stands on its own. But you know what?
Well,
You
it is
can't
good.
separate marketing from art. You cannot separate good marketing from art. Or like Jimi Hendrix, who was the sweetest guy ever, they marketed as a badass gangbanger kind of. If you could see some of the old newspaper, you know, the bills they did to promote him and stuff, they were making him look badass, and he's kind of a sweetheart, almost a nerd. In reality, you know, that's a part of art. I think that as I've grown older, that's legitimately a part of art. So but anyway, he wasn't mediocre without that vibe, is my point. But no doubt it helped market things.
Right.
Kevin had something to say, and I think he's had something to say twice.
Oh, sorry,
you know,
I do that. You got to tell me.
a throwaway point about Angie Bowie. You know what she's doing right now?
Oh, what's that?
She's in the UK version of Big Brother. You know, the
Oh, really?
reality TV show?
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So
I
is she
don't watch
pretty
myself,
interesting?
but apparently she's in that, which is a fall from grace if ever you've seen one.
Seems
There you
like
go.
Yeah, she didn't
right
age too well.
now. She was
Yeah,
already in it ahead of time, I guess. Then.
yeah. I presume they've told her that he's dead. I don't know.
That's.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's done videos on it and stuff like that. But yeah, yeah, she doesn't look too
So, what's
well
your
for wear.
favorite Bowie song? What's your favorite Bowie song?
Oh, that's impossible.
I know, isn't it almost?
That's
But you have to
I
say
do have a
it's the
favorite.
rule.
I do have a favorite, though I played, God, I don't know, probably 20 different ones in that one band. But my favorite is Loving the Alien. And that album Tonight was kind of panned by the
What about
critics.
the favorite album?
I don't really have a favorite Bowie album.
Wait, what's that one with and it's like an impressionist cover. Okay, wait, it'll come to me. It's the one with where he sings about "We Might Be Kooks," the Parent song, and it has Bewley Brothers on it. I'll find it. Never mind. I'll look on the internet here.
I don't really think you guys have got Kevin as a UKEN opinion. Like David Bowie's kind of co-opting and stamping down what it means to be one of them there Brits.
Hunky Dory.
That's
what I was thinking of. Hunky Dory. Sorry, interrupt there. Hunky Dory. That I'm looking to check, but that was out of my memory. That's my favorite album, I think. It's got Bewley Brothers on it. That's a good one.
My favorite album of his is actually Black Star.
That stuff is good. I haven't heard the whole album, but it's fantastic what I've heard.
I don't remember what's on that. I love Ziggy Stardust album. Black Star. Which one's that?
That's the one he just released before he died.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with it. Yeah.
It's really, really good. And
really,
I mean, a lot of his other albums, there would usually be several songs that I didn't like, and just a couple that I was just like, yeah, these are awesome, you know. And on this album, I like all the songs. I love all the songs, except there's one that's just like, this song is a little bit over the top in the weirdness, because the instrumentation is almost just noisy, but it's still a good song. It's the one that's Shame She Was a Whore, or something like that is the name of it. But this album is really, really, really good.
I was a huge Bowie fan in high school, and the thing is, that was funny is he'd kind of like it was an undergroundish kind of thing to still like him, because and then he did the Let's Dance thing, which isn't as good, I don't think, as his older, but it kind of stands the test of time. But at the time, I'm like, this isn't, the Bowie I like. But still, after that, he was like, oh yeah, that's right, this guy's a superstar. Remember, it was not that long ago. Look, he makes me album after album. And ever since that, he was a superstar, and he does
Yeah, but
songs with Mick Jagger.
to sort of broaden it out a little bit, because this is sort of one of the points I wanted to raise. This idea of him, because I read there's been lots of opinion pieces and stuff. The Salon piece, probably most.
Oh yeah, tell me about that, you guys. I decided not to read those. You say there's a couple hit pieces or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave
Damn.
Quinn Ticker to tell you about the Salon piece. But the one point that people kept raising in the kind of more SJWE type articles that I'd read was this idea of him being doing cultural appropriation, which it seems so strange that people would pick up on something as absurd as that. Because surely that's what we want, isn't it? That's what the idea that only black people can do originally black types of music or whatever. And it wasn't as if he was just stealing music or anything, because his advocacy of ethnic minority musicians and vocalists, and his attack on MTV, which is a great clip you should look up on YouTube, for not playing more black artists. Back in the days, the good old days, if you can remember them, where music television played music on television.
I do. I remember, yeah, MTV's first day. So yep.
Yeah. Well, there were.
See, I will look that up. Yeah, I might remember that though. I'm pretty sure I've seen it. But yeah, interesting. And so, what do you mean? People have been like what? Like he's the Elvis stealing black music?
Yeah, because he did obviously
Really?
did some soul music and R&B.
Because you know what, African American community doesn't even feel that way about fucking Elvis.
Yeah.
They're like, yay.
Well, the
No, not quite.
Very few. No, I mean, look, I've been in activist community. I love to talk. I've asked a lot of people about Elvis, including African Americans. Plus, there's tons of African American comedians, stand-up comedians that mention it. And basically, it's like Elvis popularizing African American music does not make you a bad person. That's not a stealing the way I do not believe that it is taken that way in the African American community statistically in some sense. Of course, everybody has their own opinion as an individual. But to me, David Bowie, I never even heard there was such a, because he got a little bit soul in the way how is it even African American? It's so abstract. You might as well say techno music. How dare you have a 4/4 beat? Or what's African about it? Really?
I keep trying to remember this word that gets used to describe when someone takes something from one culture. Cultural appropriation.
Right.
I've heard a number of black activists who make that argument that all white people are racist by using the new definition of racism. I've heard a number of them claim that Elvis culturally appropriated black music.
Well, that's the traditional thing I was presented with, but over time I learned that African American culture doesn't really feel that way.
Yeah.
Elvis appreciated African American music, which was to his credit. So that's really what happened.
The thing that annoys me with that phrase, cultural appropriation, is it's almost as if you're arguing the opposite of. You're essentially arguing for a cultural segregation.
Right. It's like somebody that's liberal.
That music?
I totally agree.
Somebody that's liberal insulting multiculturalism. Because I'm multiculturalist, which means, I appropriate the culture and I eat Thai food on Thanksgiving or whatever. I mean, I eat Thai food. I'm appropriating their culture because it's awesome.
I just wanted to comment, like my understanding is that word for word, Elvis ripped off some black blues singer.
It's called a cover.
But Vanilla Ice, acting black, ripped off David Bowie's "Bum Bum 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 Bum," right? And so I think that there's something.
That's different. If it's a copyright issue, that's one thing. But the idea that only one race can play one type of music because that's
and the other thing is the marketing of. Well, the marketing of Elvis, the fact that people didn't know Hound Dog was a really old song, that's not Elvis's fault. It was intentional. They're definitely, the Colonel even said, give me a white guy that sings like this and I'll make $1 billion or whatever he said. But it wasn't Elvis who sang like that It wasn't his fault. He just appreciated a really good kind of music and was actually pretty good at his own, form of it. So, I mean, appropriation is not. It's like if you actually hide where it comes from and are a plagiarist. That's different. But every white British invasion band, Cream, it was 20 years later, well, more like 10, that I figured out that's a fucking cover. Spoonful's a cover. What? That's a cover.
Well, yeah, Zeppelin.
Whatever.
Zeppelin was
Whatever.
Lead Belly.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
they all did that because those were great songs, and thank God that they brought that song to me, and I eventually heard other versions of it from sometimes the original artist. So how is that a bad thing? It's a good thing. It's the greatest thing ever.
One of the articles, the Salon articles that came out the day after he died, Bowie, was bringing up, it was talking about his dark past, right? And it was a story of a young girl who had sex with him when he was younger, but obviously too old to have sex with this person because it was like a underage thing. But the thing was, it wasn't a verified story.
Underage?
Well, it was like they just had to dredge up something and call him a child molester, on the day or the day after he died, and I had a problem.
How allegedly old was the girl and him?
Roughly,
even.
I think she was 14 and he was, I don't know, I want to say 18, 19, somewhere around there. Back then, this was back when he was first starting, right? And the thing is that this is one of those cases where they don't have any proof behind it. They just have this girl's word, this anecdote, right? And so they decided to run that story, and so now they're not happy with people being talking about what a good person he was. They want to bring up that he did this and did that, and we know they all did drugs and they all had the groupies and stuff like that back then. But the way they did it, it was really kind of crappy. And I
haven't read Salon for years. When they first started off, I read them regularly, but I haven't read them for like 10 years. I don't really have much of respect for their whole. Basically, I mean, they have quality writers, but I don't really appreciate their ethics. It doesn't surprise me. It sounds unethical to me, just in a crude way.
Well, shut up, Hero, you dark, selfish.
I don't mind there being a story like that, and I wouldn't be surprised to find out a certain amount of truth. I mean, a film lover. I love Roman Polanski, and then it was like, even though it was an old story, I never heard it. Nobody ever told me. I fell in love with all his movies, and then found out his whole scandal. That's how the world works. I mean, and it turns out even Bob Marley was sleeping around, whatever. You can only judge music as music.
Give us a Bill Cosby apology.
Film is music and film. The person is different. It doesn't mean the person that made it is good.
It
really doesn't.
It's not unethical, in fact, quite the opposite, to report on someone being a child molester. But if you wait,
no, it is not. It's a little bit ugly to do it, on the death of.
If you sit on that story until the day they die and then publish it for clickbait, that is unethical.
Well, see, that's
right.
That's essentially what happened. Now, it is not a new story, right? I mean, it's an old story, right? But they decided to put it for clickbait after that. But what was strange about it was that the Salon has been recently, in the last few months, defending pedophiles and talking about how we should be more accepting of pedophiles as people who have mental illness or whatever. And so they decided to totally backtrack on a day after his death just to sell,
I'm not sure if that's backtracking. I mean, in the master plan, that's a way to accomplish what you want, because in the end, some people are going to go, well, like with Roman Polanski. I mean, it was totally terrible what he did. He probably should have gone to jail for it. On the other hand, his wife and unborn child had been mass murdered by Charles Manson's followers, and he kind of been through a lot. I mean, it doesn't mean that he's totally unredeemable his whole life. It was kind of a dark period, and blah, blah, blah. You can easily make up excuses for people, and in a way, as a liberal, I'm for making up excuses for everybody to a certain degree. and understanding where they were coming from. So it really becomes a matter of degree, and regret and various other ways of. But that one sounds. But then again, I'm telling you, I am like worshiping David Bowie as a deity from 15 on. So I'm biased, let's just say. I kind of feel that's a hit piece. So what was this thing in HuffPost about his
Well, see, HuffPost, what was funny about that?
masculinity?
Well, what was funny about that is they had the discussion about him being androgynous and being bi and all that, right? But what they did is they wrote it in such a way they tried to deny him any sense of masculinity, right? They were like, what Bowie showed us is that it wasn't a man that made this music, and it wasn't this and that. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, if you want to say he's both or androgynous or whatever, say that. But yeah, he was a man, he was
Well,
a man,
yeah.
he did good work, but I just thought that it was really, and I think most people that see it, it probably sticks out as being like an obvious slam against them or whatever, just to sell stuff. Right?
Okay, from what it sounds, not reading it right off, it sounds like another one of these, an essayist looking for a gimmick, right? Mixed with the fact that, well, there was something sexual about what he did. He made us question our gender thing with androgyny or whatever it was he was doing with the Ziggy Stardust and Aladdin Insane or whatever. So I mean it's kind of like I could see, but I see what you're getting at. But come on, in the end, everybody knows he was a man? So if someone says something like that, aren't they saying that a man can create a non-masculine energy in the universe? And isn't that a feminist social justice warrior way of saying even men can be good women?
If they said it that
I'll
way,
accept it.
if they said it that way, that would have been the perfect statement. But they were trying to take
subtext.
Well, they were trying to take away everything.
Chica, you and I are old enough that we've got to appreciate the subtext, not just what the 20-somethings think it meant.
But Piero, it's obvious, like Vic, right? His dad fucked a parakeet, right? And we know this, right?
Sure.
That's not as discouraging as.
So that's
let's put that forth for all.
As far as I heard, the parakeet was willing. Go ahead.
Well, maybe it was a parrot. Probably a parrot. Maybe a chicken. Maybe a rooster. Where's Vic on all this?
I'm pretty sure it was a parakeet.
Anyway, I'll interject.
That's trolling, Vic. You're being kind of quiet for Vic.
It's nearly 1 in the morning here, so I'm gonna.
Well, I've got to go and watch, I believe, a Democratic debate, and Downton Abbey are conflicting. Luckily, I have a DVR. That would suck because I'd have to watch Downton Abbey probably. But
just real quick, I just want to say I have 4 favorite Bowie songs. There's Lady Grinning Soul, Space Oddity, I'm Deranged, and Lazarus.
I'm afraid of Americans.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Lazarus.
I gotta love that one.
Lazarus.
I don't remember. I know every Bowie song, but not by the title. So I'm gonna look up the 3 that you said besides Space Oddity. Wait, Lady what? I only put Lady Gr.
Lady Grinning Soul, I'm Deranged, and Lazarus. And Lazarus is
I got the other 2.
Lazarus is from the Black Star album.
Okay. Oh yeah. Oh, and that's what they named. He has a New York show right now called Lazarus. But it uses a bunch of different old Bowie songs, which sounded neat. Hopefully they'll keep playing that for 3 or 4 years, and maybe I'll go see it.
Yeah. I gotta bail, dudes. Y'all take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
So I don't have to go exactly quite now. I mean, I do actually kind of have, I have a little while. So, I mean, I'm not saying I have to go right now. But on Bowie, I felt there were some other topics of Bowie. I guess those 2 controversies, maybe we did cover everything. Quintica, did you have another? What was your... did you have anything that you, because you're the one that wanted to talk about those 2. You felt they were disrespectful or whatever.
Well, that was, those are more of the minor issues. But as far as the positives for Bowie, I think I think the thing that would sum him up the best in what I've seen of him is the is like when he says in Changes, turn and face the strange, right? It's like he made people more accepting through his music, through his image, through his different art, and by doing that, he made people more expressive. And I think that I think the in the end, it was a net gain. It was like a good thing. Whatever bad anyone could say about him, about whatever transgressions, I think he did a lot of good for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And
awesome. Me too.
Right, and with the we know he used drugs. We know that everybody used drugs back then, that kind of thing. So he was a rebel.
That's entirely non-material to me, but yeah.
Right.
That absolutely has nothing to do with what I think of him.
Right. But I mean, there are people who will
judge for
vilify
that,
him.
yeah. Or for the bisexual thing and the whole pan-genetic gender.
But I think overall, his he's had a really, really positive effect on humanity as well.
But what about just as a lyricist, as a poet? See, what I liked is you mentioned that song. What about the part of that song where he's like, time may change me, but I can't change.
Right. Well, like the.
He doesn't say time there. It's not. I can't change time. As a matter of fact, I still have to look it up.
Oh, wait. Is it
what
I
you
can't
expect.
trace time, or I can't change?
I can't trace time.
Trace time.
No,
Okay.
He says, I can't trace time. You expect him to say, time may change me, but I can't change time. That's what you immediately. It's like framing. I can't change time. Boom, and it fits. But he sings, I can't trace it.
Kazum's looking it up.
He does that all over his lyrics, where he'll set up something where you know what the ringy line is. You know what I mean? You got the one-ba-doom-two line, and then you have the clanky-clank finish line, and you know what the finish line's going to be because you're accustomed to the formula of music or whatever the reason is that you can figure that out. And then when he says it, it's different. He does that all over his music, which is just something I really like. So it's always worth listening close to every word he sings. And
I can't trace time.
I can't trace time, right? And you think it's going to be the other. So
the thing for me,
I love that.
The thing for me is that he taught by example that you should be yourself. All the different facets of yourself, all the different sides of yourself. Celebrate yourself. Celebrate who you are.
Yep.
Don't be afraid of being different. Don't be afraid of going against the grain. Don't feel that you have to conform to certain standards. Just do your thing.
Yeah.
And he did that more than any artist I can think of.
Yeah.
And I think what I think is interesting is like there are people like Lady Gaga are said to be saying a similar message, but with her it's all about fashion and not. I mean, the music. There's nothing special about her music at all. Really. There's nothing special
right, because
about
she's a neat person. I get it exactly. Yeah, I like her deal, but yeah, the music. Whereas his music was real unique and not following very closely. I mean, maybe a very thin thread of, precedence bands, but a very thin. He was not following with the herd, and and just very honest. And I don't know. And then like Hunky Dory songs about different kinds of things, about being a parent even, and I don't know. I just think he's was also a very nice person and happened to be a great poet. And I think the musical composition, again, just awesome. So I do consider. Well, I mean, come on. I mean, it's not just me. It's not just that I'm a fan of some rock star. This is classical music. I mean, it's already amazing. They're playing these songs on the radio this long after they were written, which is equivalent to when I was being a kid, as if they were playing songs from the 30s on the radio. Like they were nobody, and they're standing the test of time. We're talking about Beethoven here. I mean, David Bowie, they're going to be listening to his songs and covering them 150 years from now.
Probably.
He's in there. I don't. Yeah, it's a probably to be humble about it, but come on. You know, they are, because they do stand the test of time. They're beautiful. Both they're like, as somebody that would just pick up and play rhythm guitar, you can cover those songs. You can easily cover Major Tom, and yet you can't really, because his vocal and the actual specifics of him playing it uncopyable, but it's coverable, and you could maybe even make your own version that was even more awesome. Well, actually, back in the 80s, there was that Major Tom, like that techno new age Major Tom cover. It worked.
Well, you got the astronaut that does it.
Yeah, what was that one? But anyway,
or something like that.
But anyway, so yeah,
Mhm.
it's sad. He's pretty young, and yeah.
Yeah. So do you have to close down chat now, or what's going on?
Yeah, we got to close down in the next few minutes. I was kind of thinking here at 2000 Eastern Time, which is 4 minutes, so maybe we should just go now if we're all done. I appreciate everybody's involvement except for Vic, who was surprisingly quiet. I guess because you got all your energy out this week in my comment thread. Anybody that saw that shit, that was wild there. Okay, I vote for the woman because I'm a feminist. Okay.
Yes, I realize that. No, actually, I didn't participate because I must have come in at the tail end of the discussion when you guys were
You
talking
kind of
about
did. You kind of did.
David
Yeah.
Bowie. I don't know anything about David Bowie, so.
Oh, really?
Make something up.
You because you're a babe. Oh, we should have talked about Nelly, you guys.
Nelly.
He's
I'm not.
still
I
alive.
don't really know anything about any musician, really. I mean.
No, I knew, but I figured if I said Nelly, that would be the most distracting to your position. I know it's a general music thing that you don't orient around the history of music. That's fine.
You mean Nelly Furtado?
All right, you guys. Thanks for coming. Nice to see you, Kazumi.
All right.
All
Talk
right.
to you next week.
Same here.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.